It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are here. Coming up, we say farewell. We pour one out for dear old Skype. Then there's never enough Rust, and Google now has a way for you to remove yourself from search results. That and a whole lot more coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 922, recorded Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. There's never a not okay button. It's time for Windows Weekly. Hello, you winners and you dozers. This is the show we cover the latest from Microsoft with these fine kitty cats right here. Mr. Paul Thurrott from Thurrott.com, THURROTT.com. Hello, Paulie.
Hello, Leo.
I see you in Mexico City still. That's nice. I'm jealous.
A little distracted today. A little birdie told me about something, and now I'm just,
all he wants to talk about.
Now he's laughing like a Bond villain over there.
You have distracted me with different browsers over the years.
Yeah.
I have switched. I was a Firefox guy. I switched to Brave. Then you got me to use Arc. Now I'm hooked on Arc, but the browser companies abandoned Arc.
Leo, nobody likes comeuppance, and nobody likes to get advice. They just want to give it.
Richard Campbell's also here from RunAs Radio.com. He's in his beautiful home in Mad Park, British Columbia.
It's sunny. You want the view?
Yeah. Let's see
the view.
Wow, that is a beautiful day. Wow. How many sunny days do you get up there in BC?
Both of them.
That, as opposed to Mexico City, where there are more sunny days than there are days.
Is that true? Is it always sunny? It's always sunny in
no, it's not true. But
CMXCD or whatever it is.
It's pretty damn sunny.
Nice. Well, you're at altitude, aren't you?
Yeah.
It
is 6,000
Do you notice that you huff and puff when you go upstairs?
Oh, yeah. We talk about this all the time. We went up to 10,000 or 10,005 the other day, and
that's high.
Not running up any stairs. There's not going to be any rocky moments there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
But you figure if you spend a couple of months there, you'll start to adapt, which means when you come down, you feel a little supercharged.
Yeah, like when I was in high school, you'd throw like a medicine ball around, and then you pick up a basketball and throw through the wall.
Yep.
It'd be like that.
We did when we hiked Everest Base Camp. We met our altitude on the way down, and it's transformative. Like all of a sudden, you're Superman. You just never get winded.
Oh, isn't that cool?
Yeah, it was really an experience.
But that doesn't last.
Nope.
How long does it last?
A couple of days.
Yeah, your body goes,
quickly figures out
back.
you have way too many red blood cells. I know what to do about this.
Yeah, let's eliminate those. Right. Seems like there'd be a way to kind of.
Oh, there's trainers that do that restrict your oxygen flow so your body makes more red blood cells.
And the U.S. Olympic team trains up at altitude in Colorado.
Yeah, a lot of marathoners will train in places like Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is 6,000 feet. Or they'll run up and down the Sandias, which probably goes up to, 10 or so. Because they come back to sea level and they're super athletes.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you joined us for this edition of Superhuman.com.
Yes. The least athletic people you've ever met talking about athletics. I rode a bike yesterday. My butt is killing me. I'm not a...
I did want to mention...
I thought that was a horse. I thought you were a horse.
Yeah, Lisa showed me a picture of you as a cowboy.
Yeah, a caballero, as we say.
Caballero. And I thought, that is...
Did he lose a bet? Like, what is that about?
What's going on?
So, you know how, look, we've all seen it. You're on social media, you see some photo of something, and they'll say, only in, and it's ... whatever the place is, like, only in Boston, only in, and so he's you know what? These things happen everywhere. But let me tell you something. Riding a horse through a city,
wow.
That is kind of an only in Mexico moment. I have to say, it was bizarre.
So you were in town. You didn't go
we
like
started in the city and rode out into the woods, I guess we'll call it. Yeah. So it started in a crowded urban area. And it was just the weirdest. Yeah, it was awesome. Very strange. It was like the US in the 1800s or something. It was very strange.
I'm going to just quickly pull up the, if I can find it here,
my Morrissey photo.
Yeah, you kind of, that's a good. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
I knew as soon as I was like, I have to put this there, and I know I'm going to.
You put it there. I thought maybe it was a trick played upon you by Stephanie, your wife.
No. I was trying to take
look concerned though.
Well, because I'm on a horse holding a phone. I mean, that's the concern. I'm trying to take a
You look like you're in Handmaid's Tale. I don't know what's going on.
Exactly. No, I'm trying to take a picture of whoever that is behind me. My son, probably. I can't remember.
I think it's your wife. I think it's Stephanie.
My wife. Okay.
Or maybe it's your daughter. No, it's your daughter.
Yeah, we were in a procession of
the whole family got to go. I like the black ponchos too. You look.
But we needed them because actually up there it did rain.
You look like Clint Eastwood. Oh, look at this. Look at this.
Here
you are walking through town. The dogs are going, what the hell? That's the biggest dog I ever saw.
Dogs love the horses. And then, or some of them hate them. But you got to go over the toe pace, which are those speed bump things.
Well, they don't really, you don't really have to slow down though, right? On a horse, you're already kind of.
So his suspension is excellent.
So we did this one
fun.
day. And
then there you are. You got out of town.
Yeah, we got into the woods. But so we're coming back and my Apple Watch makes a little blurpy sound, and I look down at it. It says, "It looks like it thought I was on a walk, I think." And so I, as you do, you put your arm up so you can see it, and then you're going to hit it.
Yeah.
And that arm was holding the reins of the horse.
Oh no!
Galloped forward, and I was like, "All right, I need."
Then the watch said, "It looks like you've taken a fall."
Yeah, it's like you get to right. Except my feet are humongous, so they would have held in the stirrup thing, and I would have been hanging off the side of the horse like a jerk. So
look how pretty this is. This waterfall. Wow.
Yeah, it was neat. It was a neat place.
It's nice. Your kids are visiting, huh?
Yeah. Usually my wife and I stay in the apartment and walk around the neighborhood, and then people visit. We actually go do stuff.
Nice.
Makes sense.
It's an amusing place. But I have to say, this picture of you.
I know.
Can we make this the thumbnail for the show?
Okay. I knew I was open myself to mocking.
Yep.
I don't know what
I think I messaged him just a horse.
A horse, a man, Panama. All right. Let's talk about the subject of the hour, Windows. Microsoft, anything to report, gentlemen?
So let's move on. So a bunch of stuff, actually. Actually, this is a fairly momentous week in some ways, depending on how you measure these things. The first one is that I've lost track, and honestly, I kind of lost interest as well. But Microsoft is updating the Copilot app in Windows 11 for what I'm going to call the 127th time. I just don't understand. I don't even understand what's happening anymore. The thing but this is actually kind of interesting. Not because they're updating the app again. Seriously, what are you doing? But more because of the things they're not saying about what they're doing, right? So a couple of months ago, they updated the app. They said it was native. It's not. It's a native shell around the old web app. Sometime before that, several months earlier, they had gotten rid of that Windows integration where you could ask it about changing dark mode or whatever. Remember, that was one of the core features back in the beginning that had disappeared. And now that's back. And so it's kind of hard keeping track. The old UI was tan. This one's blue. The old UI had some kind of a daily update thing where it would redo the news for 5 minutes. That's gone. But by the way, it's probably coming back. It's written in XAML, right? So it's actually a native UI instead of being the old web app, which I think would have been easier to update, frankly. But I think it's
I don't know why they went this way, but okay.
Well, neither do I, because they're not explaining it. But my guess is it's related to that Windows functionality because they brought that back. And so I think the old web app wasn't capable of interacting with the Windows commands.
Right.
So
now we're living in the sandbox. So got
the sandbox. So I think that's why. The previous version, for some reason, dropped the side panel. That's that collapsible conversation history that you always see in chatbots. And it always had it, but then it didn't. And now it does again. Okay. So here's a couple of things, though, that they don't really talk about. If you go into these settings, there is a privacy section, and it has a couple of options, but one is checked by default. It's called model training on text. They're actually training their model now on whatever you type in there, unless you find this UI and change it back.
Now, this is the same thing that caused so much concern, isn't it? That Microsoft was going to send this information to the home office, but that's not what's happening still, right?
Well, they're training their models on what you type. So yeah, it is actually, right?
So now all that moral panic is real.
Yeah, well, that's what Microsoft does. They lull you into a sense of who cares anymore, and then they just, turn it up a notch. So
they're training now on the content, on what you're...
By default.
Well, they don't explain what
they don't explain it, but they do. Actually, there's a page. There's a fact that explains this on Microsoft.com that's linked to in my article. But by default, they are training on what you type. They're not training on what you say. So if you use your voice, you can turn those both on or off. You can turn it off, right? There's also this kind of language that says there's an option called personalization. I believe it is off. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's on or off by default, but it says it will let you use Copilot, or you'll allow Copilot to use your chats, Bing, and MSN activity, and any inferred interest for personalized experiences.
Inferred interest.
So there's a lot of things I don't like about this sentence, but if you've been in the Microsoft space for a while now, you understand that personalized experiences means tracking.
Yeah.
And inferred interest infer is an AI term, right? It's a good choice because nobody knows what it means, like mainstream users, right? So what they're really saying here is that if you use if you chat with Copilot, if you interact with Bing, and if you use MSN, which I would argue are three things no one should ever do, then it will infer your interest from your activity, right? Meaning what you type and what you do. And then it will use the combination of those things as it's been doing all along. It's just that now we're adding AI to the bucket,
right,
to personalize experiences for you.
So this is a circumlocution basically to say, hey, good news. We're tracking you.
We're tracking you. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's more, we've always been tracking you. Would you like us to use this tracking data to mess with what we say in Copilot?
Oh,
yeah. It's kind of strange. So
my instinct now is to turn all of this on, go to Bing, which you never do, search on something weird like radial arm saws, and then see what Copilot says about radial arm saws.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's not what you want, is it?
Well, that might be actually that's not a horrible idea, just to kind of see what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's almost that's almost a pain-free thing to do, because the reality is once you've done it, you're never going to use those things again anyway. Who cares? So you could just just screw with it. I mean, might as well go take a look, right?
Well, and as long as this data is used to benefit you in the sense of you're obviously interested in this information, let me provide more information in that context. The question is, where does it go from there?
Yeah. Yep. So look, this is a problem with Microsoft's web-based services, MSN, Bing, et cetera, because it's advertising based, right? And they're adding Copilot too, which, arguably is a web-based service, right? I mean, the problem is it's AI, and AI is, we keep talking about this, it's becoming really powerful. So Microsoft might have had a pretty stilted idea of your interests before and probably didn't do much with it to any effect. It was probably pretty stupid compared to, say, Google, but now they're using AI for it. So actually they're probably going to get pretty good at it. So it's a weird kind of an issue. Tomorrow I'm going to be recording a couple of, or 2 or 3 episodes of Hands on Windows. And one of them almost certainly will be about some of the new features that are coming in Phone Link, right? The phone integration app on Windows, which is much better if you have an Android phone, and even better still.
It's not that great when you have an Android phone either. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, right. Well, that's yeah. Well, it's pretty terrible if you have an iPhone. So
okay,
this is really kind of hard to explain, but there is I just love the way they explain this. There's a feature that is being exposed through this new Copilot app now called Phone Connection, and this is the thing I love about this. There's a webpage about this on Microsoft support. It says, "We're excited to announce that the phone connection, formerly known as phone plugin, has been restored with enhanced performance and refreshed visual designs, ! Microsoft." I have never heard of phone plugin in my life. I don't know what you think of me, but please know that I actually follow Microsoft pretty closely and have for a really long time. And I'm particularly concerned about Windows. And also I would say with AI, and I have never heard of this thing, and it warranted an ! So the point of this thing, regardless of its name, is that if you have if you're using Copilot on your PC, it can now connect to your mobile device, your Android device, in addition to Windows, and it will use that to personalize its responses based on data stored in the phone, which includes such things as your messages and your contacts. And yikes, is there a way to take my phone off the internet forever? What are you doing?
Well, so I think it's like this product we made to connect your phone to your PC so that you could move pictures around easier is now being used to harvest as much information from you from your phone.
Which, as you said, that is a very Matrix, the movie type term, harvest.
Yes.
No,
we're harvesting your data.
It's like the aliens tendrils coming down and suctioning your body.
You're a battery. Yeah.
But that's what's happening.
Here's what I've done with this. And when I say I've done this, I mean I've done it poorly because it's terrible. I've used it to set an alarm. No, I'm sorry, a timer. So in other words, I tell Copilot I need a timer for 2 minutes. And it says, okay. And the first 3 times it fails. But the 4th time, it actually sets a timer. I don't have my phone here. I'm sorry, it's the wrong phone. It set a timer on my Pixel. And then the UI didn't do anything. And I was like, okay. So I set it for 2 minutes. And then I went back to whatever I was doing. And all of a sudden my phone was like, and it was like the timer had gone off. And I was like, oh, I see. So according to Microsoft, it will allow you to perform common actions on your phone, through your PC on your phone, right? Sending text messages, setting alarms and timers, locating places using the map app on your device, etc. So yes, to Rich's point, it's using that phone link connection between Windows and your PC to interact with functionality on your phone, just as now it is once again doing so with Windows. With features like, turning settings on or off or whatever. So I gotta, look, I'm not a conspiracy theory. We're going to talk about recall, for example, in a few minutes.
It's not a conspiracy if they're actually after you, right?
Yeah. I'm a little, I don't know. This one's a little weird to me.
No, the good news is a reminder that the software, the rights you have to give the software to do the thing you want also lets them do all sorts of things that are beneficial for them rather than you. Yeah,
they're it does. Harvesting is such a good word because it does feel like the tendrils, violating you in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And I am a little, I don't know. So we'll see how this evolves. And the reason I say that is because the description that Microsoft provided for this update was very vague. It was only through diving into it. And I also talked to Raphael, who uncovered some stuff that's going to be is going to be coming soon. It's baked into the app. It's just not available yet. So there's more coming, but it's I don't know. It's a little weird. So anyway, there's that. In less controversial news, I just wrote this up this morning for no particular reason, but I've been using Recall on my Surface laptop for 3 months. Recall, you may recall, was a fairly controversial feature at launch.
No.
It was delayed in preview for, 6-ish months. It became available on Snapdragon, I think, in late November, and then on AMD and Intel-based Copilot PCs in December in preview. It's been updated a few times, obviously. Microsoft made a big show of all the supposed changes they made from feedback, but I argued, I think, objectively, most of it is not true. The big change they made, the only really substantive change, was to make it opt-in, right, instead of opt-out. That's huge. I mean, that is big. I can say in using this thing that there are still some controversies to it, and I'll just kind of boil it down to 2 things. And I should say a third point though is I've never actually used it, right? So this thing's been running.
You've
on
never
my
done
PC.
the searching part, like go look.
Yeah,
for
other than just to test it, right? In other words, the point of this is I did something on my PC, but I can't remember like exactly where it was or whatever.
Yeah,
and then that will help you, recall that thing, whatever it is, right? I used the green pants. I was searching for green pants, and I found a pair I sort of liked. I forgot where it was, and you can search recall for green pants. And we'll bring up that thing, right? So I made the case last May. I made the case last fall. I'll make the case now. I think recall is something that mainstream non-technical users could actually find value in. It's essentially a semantic search type of solution where...
Except if you look for your green pants on your phone, that's not going to show up anywhere in recall.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. But that phone connection thing, you have to wonder, right? So I don't know. But there are 2 controversies to recall that have been pretty persistent since I first started using it that I do experience regularly over the past 3 months. The first one is updating it. So Recall is interesting because, like other Copilot Plus PCs, it relies on disk local AI models, right? What I would call small language models, but we're just mixing up language. People call them large language models. Sometimes Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it's a language model for Recall. This is really taking screenshots, right? And then interpreting the graphic.
Well, once you hear the names of the models, you understand why what that is in a way, right? But yes, you're correct. It is taking screenshots, but it's it requires 4 models. Those 4 models are not installed on the PC by default, so you have to install them. And when I say you have to install them, I mean you have to install them. Like when you run Recall, it's like, yeah, we'd love to run this thing, but you actually have to install some updates. So why don't you go to Windows Update and install those updates and come back, and then we can play with Recall. Like, okay. So you go there and you do this, and you check Windows Update, and sure enough, there is an update waiting there. And I'm going to see if I can come up with the exact name. Maybe it doesn't really matter, but the name is something to the tune of, it's like image search. You're like, okay,
right.
Image search. I might have these out of order. It doesn't matter. It takes a long time to download. Takes a long time to install. You do it. And you're like, nice. All right, go back to Recall. All right, here we go. Nope. It says, no, sorry. There's still more updates. Could you go to Windows Update again and check? You're like, okay. And then you go back, and then there's another one. And this one's called image extraction. You're like, oh, okay. Installs really slowly. Finally, you're done. It's like several minutes later, you're like, all right, here we go. Recall. Nope. Sorry, there's more. You're like, okay, fine. You go back. Oh yeah, sure enough, there's a third one. It's called semantic analysis. You install this thing. It must be humongous. It takes a long time to install. Takes a long time to download, etc. You're done. You're like, all right, surely this is it. No, not done. There's a new one, a fourth one. This one you probably have heard of. It's Silica, right? This is the on-device AI models that Microsoft's had for a while. Okay, fine. So you download this thing, same thing. Slow install, slow download, etc. You finally go in. All right. Yep, now it works. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Now I can use Recall. So you turn it on. And if you're me, it's on the whole time. You never use it for a single thing. You don't even know why you're using it. December comes, January comes, February comes. Every one of those months, not on Patch Tuesday, by the way, but on some other day, randomly, you wake up in the morning, you look down, the Recall icon has like a slash through it. You're like, what's this? Recall is paused because it needs some updates. You should go to Windows Update and see what's there. And you're like, I think I've played this game before. And you have. And you do it one at a time, manually.
Times 4.
Yep. And this thing, look, in the context of life, maybe 30 minutes or whatever it takes isn't that long.
Yeah, but this is a totally automatable, in fact, otherwise automated process for everything else in Windows. What?
Right. So 10 years ago this year, in January, Microsoft announced something called Windows as a Service, which we all mocked because the notion of updating a legacy desktop operating system and all the convoluted, layers of code that are in this thing, as if it were an online service, is ludicrous. It's never going to work. Ironically, actually, they did a pretty good job with it, right? Not at first. It took a while, but they actually got there, right? So there's all these different ways Windows can update itself. It's really amazing. In fact, they got so good at it, they're screwing with it in Windows 11. They update Windows all the time. It's terrible. You could there is no day you couldn't check for updates and not find them somewhere in Windows, either in the store or Windows Up, whatever. There's always updates. Somehow, in this world where Microsoft can update Windows at the drop of a hat, you, the peon, have to click and click and click and click and wait and click and click and click to update this stupid thing so you can use it.
Which means really it's not going to be running when it's going to save something that you might need. Yeah.
Here's an idea. Why don't you do it overnight when I'm not using the frickin' computer and automate it because it runs in the background? Okay. So that's one problem.
What's going to happen is you're finally going to need it for something, and you're going to find out what has been running for the past 4 days.
Yeah, this is
you didn't check it and update.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to call this the Call of Duty experience because I play Call of Duty now again on a computer and not on an Xbox. Although I think it's going to be the same on the Xbox. And I don't play every day, but 3-4 days goes by, whatever it is. And I'm like, you know what? I got a couple hours to kill. I think I'm going to play Call of Duty. This will be good.
You turn it on, an hour to update everything.
180 gig download.
Yeah.
What?
Please stand by.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm not saying it happens.
You need to plan to play for tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I think I'll play Call of Duty tomorrow. I'll start the update process now.
This is not, it's not an impromptu experience. It doesn't happen every single time. It happens
but
every third time.
this used to be how Xbox was. That every single time you went to go use Xbox, it just stops. But you can actually set Xbox to update overnight.
You can. If you do that, you literally just killed the Brazilian rainforest. So your options as an Xbox owner are: do not do what you just described and update as they come, which means you will turn that thing on, not be able to play the game you want to play, because it literally won't play anything until you update the system.
Until you update everything. And
then you update, go to your update, you go to the app or the game, and you got to update that too. And hilarious, now it's time for dinner. Sorry, I hope you didn't want to play today.
Yeah.
Or you can let it go into this power management mode, which is a mockery of the term power management because it's bringing down the nuclear reactor up the street. It's using so much power. But yes, you can play when you wake up in the morning. So it's your choice. You can be selfish and kill the planet.
And I set up the machine that the Xbox was plugged into had an ARC port and things, so it turned itself on when you turned the Xbox on, which meant I always knew when the Xbox started it did its update because the machine lit up.
Yes. So there's that. Okay. The other problem with recall, which is also, I would say, user experience related, is Windows Hello ESS, right? So when all those people complained back in May or June or whenever that was, that, this is not safe, I put it on this PC, blah, 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 whatever, I'm like, yeah, but you're not using Windows Hello ESS. You can't be, you aren't. Yeah. So you're not, you're bypassing the security that protects the thing. You have no idea how secure this is. Well, I've been using this thing for about 3 months and I know exactly how secure it is. And when you talk about security, there's always that trade-off between convenience and security. Yeah. Windows Hello ESS is on the security end of that spectrum, and it is a pain in the ass. It's terrible. It's actually it's horrible to use. And the reason it's horrible to use is if you think about if you have an iPhone or an Android phone and you're using like facial recognition or like the fingerprint recognition, it's pretty seamless. Like you get a prompt, you put the phone up, it works, and that's how Windows Hello works too. By the way, on a PC, it's actually it's pretty seamless, except when you have ESS, then it becomes less than seamless because the dialog comes up, it does that little eyeball animation, right? Oh, there you are. Boop, we found you. And then it doesn't go away. You have to click the OK button.
Yeah.
Guys, work with me.
Hey, here's your seam right here. Agree to the seam, please.
So here's the thing.
You ever notice there's never a not okay button?
Yes.
Like registry is corrupt. Okay.
There's also not a checkbox that says just
never do this again.
Just make it happen. So I'm not saying this happens every single time you use recall. Like I said, I don't use it that much, but every time I use it, I have to update the models first, and then I go to get into it, and I have to wait to get in, and then I'm wondering why it's not in. It's because that stupid dialogue hasn't gone away, and it's just kind of a terrible UI. So, yeah. Anyway, all you people that complained about this last summer, you're silly and you're wrong, but there are huge problems with this thing. And I wish, look, the good news is it's still in preview, so maybe they'll fix it.
Presumably, these are the things you fixed coming out of preview.
Yeah, but this was going to go into preview last June. Like, here we are. It's
June
over 6 months
later. Not that far away, man. It's March.
I know, it's crazy. Like this is 9 months, 10, whatever that is, 10 months later. Yeah. It's weird to me that this isn't better, than it is, but okay, here we are. Okay. Only one major set of Windows Insider builds over the past week. This is that beta dev thing where if you're on 24H2, you get the same build in both channels. There is something here that I'm super happy about, which is lock screen widget customization. So since they added widgets to the lock screen, remember originally there was just the one. I think it was weather to start. Then they added the other three. They take up the whole bottom of the lock screen. They're fine. People seem to like them. Although if you use Windows Hello to sign into your computer, you don't even get to look at them.
You never get to see them.
They come and go, right? But okay, fine.
Yeah.
My ADD logical brain looks at that and says, okay, this is fine. Is there a way to determine which of those appear? No, there is not. They're either all on or they're all off.
Don't be silly.
Yeah. So they are adding that feature now. So in the Insider program. So that suggests to me that we'll see it in Windows by mid-year maybe. And you'll be able to check, which ones you want, like a normal UI would have. So that's good. But that's how features get developed in Windows now, right? They add it, they change it, and then people give feedback and they're like, oh yeah, we should probably let people determine in this case which ones to show, which to me is just obvious, like we should have been there 1.0. And then they add it. And by the time we're done talking about this, when this actually appears, I think about 18 months will have gone by. That's how long these things take. It's stupid.
I mean, it is in the insider. So are they leaving low-hanging fruit for the insiders to pick? Like, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't see how you rush out widgets to a lock screen without this. To me, this is part of the package. Like, I don't.
Some PM thought somewhere, people may not care. Let's just try it without and see what happens.
You know what happens when you do that? You find out about every single person that cares, which we're going to talk about later when we talk about Skype. So
I think it's kind of useful to do it that way. Like, he's collecting empirical data. I'm a big believer in PMs collecting external data whenever they can.
Yeah. So every time Microsoft updates any product, you'll find someone complaining, not necessarily about the update, but because they have a pet peeve about some other feature in that product. And they say, yeah, but what about whatever this thing is, right? And this is common, in our roles, all of us, we deal with this kind of feedback all the time. We don't have the answer. We're not the ones making these decisions, but yeah, it's a fair question. How come you've added something no one asked for, but how about fixing this thing a lot of people have been asking for? And we don't know. We don't know the internal machination. So one of the things that to me falls in this category is something that actually I use all the time and really like, but I'm not really sure anyone else uses, which is Windows Share, right? That thing that debuted back in Windows 8. And my God, they keep changing it and adding to it and whatever. And so this
fundamentally, it feels like it should be a good idea. Why is it going so poorly?
I can't speak for the world, right? But I know for me, when I'm on mobile, if I read an article and I want to read it later, it's Share, and then I use Instapaper, but it could be Pocket, whatever you happen to use. Very common, right? Or you could share a web page to your Messages app and text messages. Like, I think people do that all the time.
I do it on my Android device. Like, I go to Google Maps to look the location I want to go, and I can share it to the Rivian.
Yeah.
Right. And then the Rivian suddenly uses the big screen. I don't have to bother with Android Auto. I'm happy.
Yep. So Microsoft has applied. Look, it goes back, like I said, to Windows 8. So back in 2012, they probably started working on it in 2010. iPhone had come out. iPad had come out. We're going to adapt Windows for this new mobile world. Look, we all bitched and moaned about it, but whatever. But okay, we get it. And I would say for mainstream users, it's nice to have UIs that, are familiar. Windows 11 has a kind of a mobile UX, UI, whatever you want to call it. Okay, cool. I don't know. I don't think anyone's using this thing, but they keep screwing with it. Like I said, I think a week or two ago, I was talking about how they consolidated the UI and they hid.
The other thing is, it's still in the insiders. Anybody who's in the insiders perfectly happily emailing stuff to themselves. So
I think everyone on earth is perfectly happy. That's the thing. I think that's the mind shift. I think that the trick for Microsoft, and maybe this is just a psychological barrier they can't get by, is that when you sit down, not you, but when, like maybe a mainstream normal user, they're like, all right, I'm doing, this is a PC. This is old. It's old fashioned. I have this way of working on this thing and I can't wait to get off it because all the fun stuff on my phone or whatever. And I don't know that we're making this transition along with Microsoft, I am, I actually do use Share on Windows, like I said, all the time.
Right. But you also use new browsers, so we know you're not normal.
That's right. I'm not change averse necessarily. So I don't actually see this on my computer, even though I'm in the I'm in the wrong computer. That's why. I have real trouble with this. So in the dev and beta channels now, if you right click a file or group of files to share, and there's a share option, obviously, the share option in the menu will have a sub menu of apps. So you can go directly from that right click to the app. So if you have a compatible app on your computer, you want to share whatever it is, a document, image, whatever, you want to share it with whatever app might be in that list, you could do it directly. And if you don't see the app you want to do something else, you can just click share again and it will go to the old UI. So that's fun. And this is one I hope to hear from someone in the chat on, because I thought this was the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but they made a big deal of it. They're changing the way that Task Manager calculates CPU utilization in the processes, performance, and user pages in Task Manager.
Okay.
Apparently, there are standard metrics for this. Microsoft is not using those. This probably dates back. This is probably written in Quick Basic 3.0 or something. I have no idea.
Yeah, no. If it's not compliant with standards, it hasn't been compliant standards for decades.
Forever. Like literally from the beginning. I'm sure this is an NT, 1.0, 3.1, whatever, thing. But there it is. If you want it to still do the old way, you can add an optional column called CPU utility, and it will show you the old value. So I don't know who's looking at this thing, but I don't know. There you go. So anyway, yeah, this is what we're testing. That stuff. Okay.
I don't know how anybody would know if they changed the calculation.
Right. Yep. That's I use Windows every day, all day long. I would never notice this. It could be an octal. I wouldn't even
one
notice
guy who's like, hey, these calculations have changed. I've been monitoring this for years. Here's my spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's going to be, some developer, some technical person who's like,
one guy.
Excuse me. Yeah. This is off by 1.7%. I don't know.
This is the kind of person who detected that exploit that changed the timing on the SSL.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We need those people, right? We just need everyone not to be like that. That's most people not to.
We need that guy.
We do need that person, but we don't need two. Yeah, we don't need two of them. Exactly.
Well, good news. Everybody's forgotten his name, and he's back in his corner office somewhere.
His name is
and ready to help us again when the time comes.
If it ever happens again. On tonight's point, you know who remembers his name? Kevin.
Kevin. Speaking of ADHD, buddy. Jeez.
How did you
Kevin's
know that,
also
Kevin?
a one.
Did you ask Copilot? Come on, tell the truth. All right, let's. He says it's in his
pure
brain.
Memory. Okay.
Let's pause for a moment before you go on. We have some rusty news, but first, I have a word from our sponsor. How about that? US Cloud. You guys know US Cloud. I hope you do. I've been talking about him now for a while. I'm going to confess something. I had never heard of them, and the name didn't really tell me what they did, so I called them. They filled me in, and now I think you should call them because this is great. US Cloud is the #1 Microsoft Unified Support replacement. That's right, third-party Microsoft support. They are the global leader, frankly, in third-party Microsoft support for enterprises. They support 50 of the Fortune 500. And they can say, there's 3 reasons people would switch to US Cloud. But #1, they save you money. In fact, 30 to 50% over Microsoft Unified and Premier support. But it wouldn't be any good if it only saved you money. They're also faster and they're better. So faster, they're twice as fast on the average time to resolution versus Microsoft. And when your hair is on fire and the network's down and you're going crazy, twice as fast is good. They also, though, they're going to live up to their name now because they have something new that I think will save you money and is pretty cool. It's a new offering. They call it their Azure Cost Optimization Service. So I think I don't have to tell you. It's easy to forget you've got, as what your Azure usage is, right? I mean, when's the last time you really looked at all of it? If it's been a while, you probably have some Azure sprawl, a little spend creep going on. But good news, saving on Azure is easier than you'd ever think with US Cloud. They have, and by the way, I don't think Microsoft would offer this. They have they like it that you've got all that extra Azure going, right? Keep the spigot on. But US Cloud has now an 8-week Azure engagement. It's powered by VBox. It identifies key opportunities to reduce costs across your entire Azure environment. And you're going to get expert guidance. You're not just like, here you go, try it. You're going to get access to US Cloud's senior engineers. I told you these guys are better. They have an average of over 16 years with Microsoft products. These are the pros, right? Now, at the end of the 8-week engagement, you'll get an interactive dashboard, and you will see very clearly rebuild and downscale opportunities. You'll see resources you're just not using. You get to choose, but you can reallocate your precious IT dollars now towards needed resources. And I know, that budget is tight, right? Now, you might want to do what a lot of people do, which is take the savings and put it into US Cloud's Microsoft support and save even more. That's actually a very popular option, and I'm sure US Cloud would like it if you do that, but you don't have to. Be nice, though, wouldn't it, to completely eliminate your unified spend and shrink your Azure engagement? Sam, the technical operations manager at Bead Gaming, he gave US Cloud 5 stars. He said, we found some things that had been running for 3 years that no one was checking. These VMs were, $10 grand a month, not a massive chunk in the grand scheme of how much we spend on Azure. But once you get to $40,000 or $50,000 a month, that really adds up. It's simple. Stop overpaying for Azure. Identify and eliminate Azure creep and boost your performance. And you can do it all in 8 weeks with US Cloud. Just one more reason. You got to call US Cloud right now. Visit uscloud.com, book a call, find out how much you can save, and find out more about this Azure engagement. This is a really good idea. uscloud.com, book a call right now and get faster, better Microsoft support or less. We thank US Cloud for supporting our show. We appreciate it. And I hope you will support us by telling them if they ask you, oh, yeah, I heard about you on Windows Weekly. Leo was talking about it. That helps us too. All right, Paulie, back we go. Let's talk about Rust.
Yeah.
We were actually talking about that yesterday with Steve and how important it was to use memory-safe languages. Replace C and C++ with something that's much more reliable. No more buffer overflows. Right?
It's just a whole class of errors that you don't have now.
Yeah.
Right? You know what's consistent about this is the Google, I think, was the first of the major platform users to make the shift with Android. Go figure. And then Linux famously a couple of years ago, and then Microsoft, right, with Windows and Azure. And at least two of those three have used the same figure, which is this immediately eliminates 70% of a class of errors, which are all memory related. You know,
this is what Steve was talking about yesterday.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Just gone.
Now, there's a lot of pushback about this, right? And this is tied to, you know, familiarity and people with expertise in languages and the history of things and so forth. And so,
this is all old people complaints.
Exactly.
Well, if you, hey, believe me, if you learn C++,
yep,
you put all that time into C++.
Yeah.
Oh,
you want everyone else to suffer as much as you have.
Yes, exactly.
I watched the thing, Mark Rust-inovich, actually it's in the thing we're going to talk about in the video, but he recently said something to the effect of, look, C is a great language. I can read C code. I understand it. I look at C++, and I'm like, what is
the
that?
hell's
like
going on?
It's purposefully obfuscated. Like it's ridiculous. And that's fair, And
it was all, I'm sure, an attempt to make it safer,
better, of course.
better.
Yeah, just like McDonald's was an attempt to make food better, but it made us fat. I mean, there's unintended consequences, right? So,
are you saying C++ is the Twinkies of programming?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was going to say Big Mac, but yeah,
the Big Mac,
the Big Mac of programming languages.
It's so delicious, but really,
it's just so delicious. Yeah. So much extra bread that we don't need. So. Look, the C++ guys are coming out in force now. They're like, well, we could improve our languages to make them memory safe. Like, why don't we just do that? Wouldn't that be better? And
Rust is very C-like, though. I mean, it's not.
I don't listen. I don't actually buy the big. Well, let me just get into this story first. So, and because he addresses all this. So, Mark Rust-inovich is the CTO of Azure. He is famous. You've probably heard of him. He reverse engineered the NT kernel back in the 90s, wrote articles about how you could flip one registry switch and make NT workstation into NT server, et cetera, et cetera. He wrote all the sys internals, WinInternals tools, et cetera. He knows what he's talking about, right? So a couple of years ago, he said, look, I don't think we should have any new C or C+ code in the kernel. And he meant Windows and Azure. And in Linux, this has been very controversial. We talked about this like last week or a couple of weeks ago, or both. In Windows, based on what he's communicated publicly, because we don't see that development publicly, not so controversial actually at all. Like they've really embraced it inside of Microsoft, and not just in the kernel groups, but across Microsoft, right? Office and other parts of Microsoft as well. So he gave a talk at a Rust conference about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, maybe now, which is worth watching if you care about this topic. And it's funny in a way because he says, I put out that tweet and then he got a call from Satya Nadella and he was like, really? And he goes, yeah, really. And he's like, all right. I trust you. Like, you know what you're talking about, right? So that was kind of interesting. But he also said, like, I wasn't even clear in my role as Azure CTO at the time if I even had this power to just kind of say this. And he's like, actually, I said it and it just happened. Like everyone was on board 100%. And so there's all this stuff that everybody knows why Rust is great, right? But the thing that's interesting about this talk is he discusses the things that are issues, right? He talks about the feedback they got within Microsoft over a period of years. And of course, the big one is that thing that we saw in the Linux flare-up recently, which is interoperability with C and C++. And this is that's going to be an ongoing issue, because the reality is, until some future thing, and this is it's the future thing that I'm most interested in here, we are going to be dealing with both code bases, pretty much forever, right? I mean, the reality is these things have to exist together. We're not just going to wholesale replace everything. There is, testing and new bugs that get introduced and all kinds of things that happen when you not just refactor code, but rewrite it right in a different language. I mean, serious. He said that pretty universally, people would adopt it or try to adopt it and be confused for about 2 months, right? Because it's so, because of the memory stuff that's just in your face. And then the spit flips and they're like, I love this. I will never do anything but this. Like, this is
I also wonder how it impacts hiring.
Yeah.
There's a certain class of developer that's going to be more excited to work in Rust than in C++.
This is a real, it's not universal, because like I said, they're using it across Microsoft in interesting ways. Like the Office adoption of Rust is actually replacing C#. That was kind of fascinating to me. Not just to replace C#, but rather that there was this underlying code that, because of the time it was written in C#. It's used across Office on all the different places Office appears, right? Desktop,
it's very unusual. Crossing between garbage collected and non-garbage collected is not a trivial thing.
Right.
So
and that's
the idea that this thing didn't need to be garbage collected means it probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. It either needs that or it doesn't. C# is a garbage collected language.
Yep. And the managed language. And so you get that kind of overhead of the runtime and all that stuff. So there's an instant performance
also means you're
benefit.
okay with non-deterministic memory behavior.
Yeah.
And in low-level environments, that's just not acceptable, right? You don't write drivers. You don't write microcode. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So
no, it's completely different. Yeah. And I this is kind of fascinating to me. I just, so the UEFI, the firmware that's in Surface is written 100% in Rust. And it is also the firmware they use in Azure and in their data centers. So it has been open sourced. In fact, most of the stuff that he discusses has been open sourced by Microsoft. It's called Project Mu, M-U. You can find it on GitHub. So they're encouraging, PC Maker partners, to use this as well. He didn't discuss whether any have or will. They've been a pretty resistant group to anything, frankly, forever. So I don't know that that's ever going to happen, but kind of interesting. In every case, there's been a performance benefit. In every case, the experience has been overwhelmingly positive for those people involved, and they will never go back. Like, that's been one truism of this. So, or a set of truisms, I guess. And then I'm trying to think what the other, tooling is an issue, obviously. I mean, Microsoft has a rich body of programming tools, utilities, frameworks, languages, et cetera. So, getting everything up to speed to work with Rust is going to take some time. And of course, Rust itself is also still evolving, even though it's, 10 years old or so. There's some bits of it that aren't yet stable that could change, and we still have to deal with that. And in Windows, of course, thanks to the architecture dating back to literally, I think, the first version, 85, dynamic linking, right? From when we didn't have enough RAM to run something as big and heavy as Windows. Dynamic linking, which is common in Windows today, still is a problem with Rust, apparently. So it's not, it's not all perfect, but the way he says it is, look, it's not all rosy, but it's rosy enough, and we're all in, is the way he said it. So,
well, and it looks like sort of these, when you can define the API barrier, one side can be Rust and one side can be something else.
Yeah.
And plus there's excellent books on Rust. Yeah. It has a crab and they call themselves Rustaceans.
Rustaceans, yeah.
So hilarious. Really.
You know why they call it that? Because they took the C out of the word.
Oh, I get it now.
See? Because crustacean, take away the C, which is what they're doing with the language, it becomes a Rustacean.
I didn't actually get that.
I just made that up, by the way. I don't know if that's true, but I think that.
It's a Rustacean.
Yeah. That's my Adderall.
Because otherwise it'd be crust.
Yes, right. Yeah, we're crusty. Yeah, you sure are. We're waiting for you to retire.
It's not exactly C-like, but all languages nowadays, all imperative languages, it's just like C.
But it is C-like, right? It's C-like. Most languages say are C-like, I guess. modern languages.
I think people resist. You spend a lot of time learning a language.
This is all I deal with now is people resisting everything. You know?
Nobody wants to do anything anymore.
I know. I couldn't explain anything enough for someone not to be like, yeah, but, and then they say something. I'm like, I addressed that like 2 hours ago. They just they can't get past it.
We did a whole thing on .NET Rocks about the C# services being migrating to Rust. And it's like, is Microsoft abandoning C#? I'm like, no.
Yes, of
course.
What
about something like F#, the functional version?
No, so functional languages like F# are never going to replace mainstream language. They're very special use cases.
People like their global variables.
Yeah. G# maybe,
Plus there's a group of folks who can think functionally. Like, it's a different way of thinking, and it's very hard to hold both in your head.
Yeah.
And so the F# believers are a small group of very enthusiastic people. They're great at what they do. Their code is not obvious.
Indecipherable. Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you're used to imperative languages, it's not. But you can get used to functional. And once you grok it, I think it's certainly safer, right?
All right, so
it's got some advantages, but
you're eliminating these side
What
effects.
I'm about to say is going to sound super unsophisticated, but they're literally working on this. So when I first heard about Rust a couple of years ago, when this first came in the Microsoft space, right? I heard that Microsoft was working on Rust. They're putting Rust into the kernel. They've since shipped Rust in the kernel. You can go to the command line and see the components that are written in Rust, et cetera. Very exciting. And then AI happens, right? These two things were kind of coincidental at Microsoft in a way.
Time-wise.
And AI, we just talked about this briefly, but AI is especially good with programming. And of course, in my dumb Cro-Magnon brain, I think to myself, that one of the first things I blurt out without really thinking it through is, couldn't you just take the Windows kernel and say, hey, Copilot?
No, you can't
rewrite this in Rust.
Okay, I'm just going to say,
I know.
There.
No, but hold on a second. They are actually working on what I just said.
Oh,
so this is not happening tomorrow. It's not happening in next year, whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen. At the end of his talk, Mark Rust-inovich discusses that aspect of this, which is it's not going to be like flip a switch and compile, and
it's also a very normal practice when you're switching languages like this, you migrate smaller pieces.
Yeah.
And you build up a repertoire of skills.
Exactly. And then it gets better and better. And then it accelerates. And soon you're like, oh, wow.
The thing that worries me is if you use, it depends how you use it, but if you use AI to code, often that means you don't really know what's going on. It's a little brittle. It's hard to debug.
Yeah.
It's all well and fine until it doesn't work.
No, like I said, this what I said is patently vague and super high level. It's not. It doesn't make any sense.
And I trust Mark Rust-inovich. My God.
Yeah. So the way he said it is, look, we want to automate the translation of C and C++.
I think they can do that.
We're using LLMs for this. They've created something called GraphRag that uses RAG in LLMs to extract knowledge from raw text and structured forms, which is not how it's like what he calls, I think, a hierarchical RAG, if you will. It's supposed to be much more precise for certain things, but especially for translating software code
to a really
language.
Interesting use of AI. If it can do that, I think that is really a proof of concept. That's very powerful.
And he, by the way, so his demo of it is as dumb and basic as it could be, which I think highlights how far away it is. But it's a text mode game written in Python, which is like a little side scroller thing. And you flip a switch and it's in Rust and it's 100% identical. And it's one of those things where you have to prove that everything, the output or the output you receive on whatever input is exactly what it has to be exact, right? It has to be exactly the same. It can't be like sort of the same. It has to be exactly the same. And so, yes, that's a silly example, but that's, like I said, we're
going to interview right after the show, actually on Intelligent Machines, Gary Marcus, who has been kind of very outspoken, in fact, about saying, don't use AI to code. So I think it'll be interesting.
I got bad news for this guy. I just, I'm sorry, but that ship has sailed. I mean, it's happened. This is, Brad.
We're talking about 50 million lines of code.
Oh, yeah. No, of course it has to scale. It's a lot. It is being used to write code right now. It's not being used probably to write 50 million lines of code.
But if you're talking about Windows, if you're going to take on all Windows.
Yeah.
But the other side of this is the performance side, right? Like they went after C# services because they measured how much it cost them to operate it in Azure. And anything that reduced the cost of operating in Azure is what matters.
A net win, yeah.
And Rust is pretty performant, right? I mean,
they have never seen anything but performance gains. And someone, one of the bits of obvious feedback he addresses actually in his talk is, he says, I'm just going to get in the way of this right now. I know what you're thinking. But Mark, if you refactored this code in C or C++, you would probably get some kind of performance benefit as well. And he says, right. But if we did that, we would be doing it for that reason. We were not doing it for this reason. We have still to this day never done it for this reason, but we still see 10, 20, 30%, whatever the number is, depending on the code. You just get it for free.
Yeah.
He's like, we haven't even optimized for performance. That's just what we got by doing it. Yeah. So sorry, but that's, yeah. So this is, it's not the reason to use Rust, but it's a nice side benefit, right?
Yeah.
So far, at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was why people used C, because it was as close to assembler as you could get, and so it was very performant.
That's why I used Quick Basic.
It was the easy language compared to assembler. Like that was the fun part.
That's right.
But it was,
and then it became the assembler for the next generation of people who thought that was too.
Yeah, it was really just. I think in the earliest days, just an assembly language preprocessor, really. But
okay, more or less.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
And then when we went object oriented, because it was memory efficient in the 80s, that's C++.
That's
right?
what it really bogged.
There's you need some ontological humility. They were making the best decisions they could make at the time with the resources.
I think a lot of really smart people lost their mind on OOP. A lot, and Microsoft
definitely went too far. And
if you look
Gates
at things like MFC, and they were going to do this object-oriented file system in Cairo, and object-oriented UI, right? And so one of the big compromises they made when Windows 95 came out was like, we can't do this Cairo thing. It's just too resource intensive. This has to run on a 4 megabyte PC or whatever it was at the time. And what they came up with was, the object base, which is like when you put a kid's drawing on the refrigerator and you tell them it's great, it's like, I don't even know what it is, but that was Windows 95. But then they used it in NT, right? And then we still use it today, right? So that it was good enough for that purpose, I guess. Okay, so there's that. I wrote the way I wrote this next thing in the notes is the way I decided I'm going to turn into the Onion of the tech world, and this is how I'm going to write headlines. Intel delays Ohio fabs until after the Earth careens into the sun. So,
by the way, the sun will be coming to us, not the other way around.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay,
thank you for correcting me on that joke. So that's good.
It's okay. We have billions of years to prove them wrong.
The Earth is absorbed by the sun.
No, I love it. You are my people, Richard. That's good. I'm completely off track because now I'm thinking about that. All right, so
it's only 2030, man. That's 5 years from now.
But they were supposed to open this year.
Yeah, whatever.
So look, the funny thing, well, that's not funny, but oddly enough, these fabs, there's two of them, they've already started construction on both. You can, it looks like Chernobyl, but they're partway there, I guess.
But there's not a lot of difference between a fab and a nuclear power plant, to be honest.
Yeah.
They take too long and well over budget. Like, it's very similar.
So right now, these things are big construction projects. They're slowing, not stopping. So the claim here is like, look, if market demand increases and we need them more quickly, we're not starting from scratch. We're not restarting from scratch. We're doing it, but we're going to do it slow. I don't know that Intel as we know it today will exist by the time 2030 or even 2032, right? Because that's as long as it really could take. According to this new schedule, by the time that comes around, we'll see. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to remain positive, but it's hard to get out of the death spiral, idea for Intel. And then Dell and HP, as I predicted, shortly after last week's show, issued their earnings. Not as positive as Lenovo's in either case. One interesting point, though, Dell overall was up 7% revenue-wise to we'll call it $24 billion. Dell, like Lenovo, but not like HP, also has these other big product lines, like in server space especially, right? And so they've never stopped being that unified enterprise company that does everything. HP is PCs and printers. From a revenue perspective, they're PCs, really, right? So, they're mostly PCs. It's like
there's no margin on printers.
80%. Well, and actually, the margin's not bad on the others because of the ink and everything, but the amount of revenue is much smaller. But oddly enough, if you look just at the PC businesses of both companies, Dell's revenues are actually significantly higher than HP's. And I can't explain that 100%. I will say both companies are overwhelmingly serving the commercial PC market. HP has a higher percentage of PC sales revenues, whatever units, that are for consumers than Dell does. Dell is, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, well, this would be infrastructure group solutions is different from client solutions, right? Whether it's desktop PCs versus rack mount servers for cloud.
Well, looking just at PCs, Dell's
so you're meaning desktop
business,
PCs.
Yep, is bigger than HP's right now. And that's weird because HP, if you look at market share, et cetera, is actually a much bigger company in the PC space than Dell. HP was until a couple of years ago the biggest PC maker in the world. They're number 2 now. Dell is a distant number 3. But if this trend continues, they'll be number 2 pretty quickly. Actually, I don't know what's going on there. So, and did they break out laptops versus desktops? Because I presume it's all laptop. Yeah, they don't do it that. No, I'm sorry. Actually, they kind of do. So it is almost it's 80 to 90% laptop. Yeah, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head or in front of me, but I don't know. I think Dell makes nicer laptops, and I think Lenovo makes nicer than any of them. But Dell just rebranded. Yeah, but Dell's brands are terrible. Like right now, Dell used to have those. Well, they detonated their brands. But that's not reflected in this. That's true. In this annual report, that'll show up next year when everybody knows how to buy their product. Yep. So I don't know. Maybe Dell is just benefiting more from that refresh cycle we keep pretending is happening, but I don't know. So Dell, hey, you know what? You've now talked about 3 PC companies that are all making more money. Something's going on. Fair enough. Fair enough. And then I probably should have added this to the Intel story before, but Intel today at Mobile World Congress announced the vPro, meaning commercial versions of their latest Core Ultra Series 2 processors. All of these are Arrow Lake designs, not Lunar Lake, meaning they don't have that 48 TOPS. The NPU sucks. NPU, right. It's a 13 TOPS NPU, like a little bit better than the one in Meteor Lake. So, it's just the nature of the way they updated. So, most of them are for laptops. Lunar Lake thing really went well for them, didn't it? The funny thing is, from the perspective of someone who buys one of those computers, it ended up fine. Yeah. If you were to buy one of those today, it's fine. It's not as good as the AMD stuff. No, and I'm still in the market for buying a new machine. I don't know how many tariffs I'm going to have to pay to buy it at the moment, so I might want to wait a little while. Yep. So I would say, having always built Intel machines, I feel like I'd need to build an AMD machine. That was my advice at the beginning of the year for Acquire. From admins. Definitely go AMD. Although of the whatever it was 4 or 5 lines of updated vPro chips, they announced the last of those, the 200S, is a desktop chip, right? So they have desktop class AI PC, great, but they don't have desktop class Copilot plus PC because seriously, Intel, whatever. So if you were holding out on that, I was. Either change the Copilot spec or make me a better chip. I ordered that cute little framework. Yeah, you got it. It's an AMD, and I won't get it till Q3. The framework, right? No, you got your. I got my Meerkat, my System 76. That's going to be a. That's a cool probably computer, didn't need that, but did you now get I'm thinking. Does it come with dedicated graphics, or did you just get it with the both? Yeah. But it's AMD, and they say it's like this new system on a chip. I'm telling you, the AMD chip by itself is going to be awesome. It's got, they say 50 TOPS. So I got 128 gig one with all the, as many GPUs as I could. And not even so. I don't. I want that to be my AI server. I should be getting the latest gen that they announced at CS, a laptop with that chip in it soon. But using what was the top of the line for laptops as of last September, I can turn Call of Duty up basically all the way graphically, and it does 110 frames a second at whatever 2800 by something, like stupid resolution. Like I was like integrated to make this a gaming machine. But I'm just saying integrated graphics. Yeah, like that's incredible. And then the AI stuff between that integrated GPU, whatever the name of it is, and the NPU, which is incredible. I mean, some good stuff happening there. Yeah, it's a 8060S Radeon graphics, so it is an integrated, but it's a system on a chip. Yep. And this is the one they say they claim 50 TOPS, which is decent for a home. And I got enough RAM and enough. Well, by the way, that's 50 TOPS That's probably just the NPU. I mean,
I don't know.
No, it is.
Is
That's
it?
what. Yeah. So when
I just got it
Intel,
because it's cute.
yeah. Well, but when Intel talks about TOPS now, they try to. It's like, yeah, the NPU is only 13 TOPS, but if you add in the CPU and the GPU, which are also both integrated, obviously it's, I don't remember the number, but it's still not 40 or 50. It's like 20 or something.
Well, one of the reasons Framework is soldering this on, which is kind of counter to their original proposition, which was all upgradable and modular, is because they said they worked with AMD and there was no way to get the throughput unless they used unified memory. So this is 128 gigs of RAM that is I think 96 gigs of which are available to the NPU or to the GPU.
Right. Yep.
So that's a good thing for AI.
This is common to, Lunar Lake, the latest AMD stuff, all the Snapdragon stuff does the same thing. So the RAM is integrated somehow, either on die or, with the die or whatever. It's for that reason. And that's why you buy most laptops, not all laptops, most laptops today, they don't have a RAM. They don't even have a DIMM slot. You can add to it. What you get at purchase time is what you get.
Yes, this is all soldered in. You can change the motherboard. That's all you can do. So this is the AMD AI 300, AI Max 300.
Yeah. So that is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the latest one that they announced at CES. So that's a step above the stuff I've used.
I mean, very interesting. I mean, does everybody need a home AI server? No.
Well, I wait till July. I mean, yes, the answer will be yes.
Yeah, that's about when I'm going to get it, July or August.
It's that's that whole, do I really want to be calling out to OpenAI with everything I say in my house?
Right.
So we're going to talk about this soon because we're going to talk about this.
Let's save it for the AI segment, which is still to come.
You're not calling to OpenAI. Yes.
You're listening to Windows Week. Do you want to take a break now? I got lost track.
We hit the end of that section. Yes,
we're at a good place to take a break. And then we come back. Microsoft 365, AI, Xbox, and we got a little tease. We've got a castle of whiskey coming up.
A castle?
A castle. It's from a castle.
A castle.
That's how good it is.
Is it like a hectare of?
They make it in a castle.
I see.
I don't know. It's actually Irish, right? I like Irish.
Somebody gave me the size of something in hectares yesterday. And I was like, I don't know what that means, right? You're just talking. What are you doing?
What is that in hands? How is that?
What are you talking about?
Farthings, perhaps? Would you?
He was like, what is that in, acres? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Everybody in the rest of the world uses, right?
Yeah.
We use acres. They use hectares.
I don't know.
I got a hectare up here.
Is hectare in Canada?
I have a hectare on the side of my
like everywhere else in the civilized world. Yeah.
Trying to pick it off.
It's just you and the North Koreans, man.
Little hectare.
I blame Jimmy Carter. He wanted to go metric, but he backed down at the last moment. He was a nuclear submarine guy. He knew that everything had to be metric. Instead, we've got 2x4s that aren't 2x4. We've got socket sets that don't work with metric. It's insane.
I strongly recommend the Nate Bargatze SNL skits as George Washington for this.
Isn't that funny?
They're beautiful.
Isn't that hysterical? They're sitting around a campfire.
He's like, so in the United States, then you say that your kids go to school for 12 years. And he's like, what is wrong with you? Get off the boat. It's like, nobody says that.
All right, let's take a break. We will come back. More of Windows Weekly still to come with Paul Thurrott, of course, and Richard Campbell, Mr. Hectare, Richard Campbell. But first, a word from our sponsor, Zscaler, the leader in cloud security. This is how you protect yourself. See, the problem is enterprises over the years have spent unlimited funds on perimeter defenses, right? Firewalls, hoping that if you keep people out, you'll be all right inside the network, right? They also, of course, have VPNs, so you can burrow through the firewall into the network. How's that working out? Not so good. Breaches are skyrocketing. 18% year-over-year increase in ransomware attacks. I predict because of we're backing off on investigating Russian ransomware groups, that it's going to be worse this year, right? Last year, a $75 million record payout to ransomware gangs. Double that, easy this year. Maybe that's a little scary. These traditional security tools, they expand your attack surface because the VPNs have public-facing IPs. It's like, here, guys, here's how you get in. And, of course, the bad guys are using AI tools now, so they're working faster and better than ever. It's amazing, really, some of the exploits they've got out there. And then, of course, what happens is the bad guy penetrates your perimeter defenses, and you're just assuming, well, anybody's inside, it's got to be a good guy, so we'll let them have access to anything they want. Lateral movement, no problem. So they get in there, they can look at everything. They start exfiltrating your data through encrypted traffic through the firewall. The firewalls are struggling. They can't inspect that in encrypted traffic at scale. So you've got data leakage. It's actually not just ransom anymore. Now it's like blackmail. Hey, we've got all your customer data. You wouldn't want us to put that on the dark net, would you? They blackmail you. And then they say, oh, and by the way, boom, you're encrypted. The bottom line is hackers are exploiting this, inadequate security structure, traditional security structure, and they're doing it with AI. They're outpacing your defenses. We got to rethink security. You can't let bad actors win. You need Zscaler, zero trust plus AI. So first of all, Zscaler hides your attack surface. Apps and IPs are not visible. A hacker can't attack what they can't see, right? Also, it eliminates lateral movement. Even if a hacker's in your network, users are only connected to the specific apps they're authorized to connect to, not the whole network. And Zscaler continuously verifies every request based on identity and context. Plus, it simplifies your job by automating with AI, so security management's easier than ever. And by the way, Zscaler is keeping an eye out. They detect over 500 billion daily transactions, and they use AI to filter out the good stuff, most of it, right? And find those attacks, those needles in that haystack. Hackers can't attack what they can't see. Just remember that. Protect your organization with Zscaler, zero trust plus AI. You can find out more at zscaler.com/security. Protect against all kinds of attacks, even attacks no one's ever heard of, all those 0 days. Because zero trust works. Zscaler.com/security. We thank you so much for supporting Windows Weekly. You support us when you go to that address so they know you saw it here. Zscaler.com/security. Microsoft 365.
I'm ready for the wake.
Is it over? Is it over?
So,
Skype. Oh.
Microsoft announced this week that they're going to, kill Skype in May, pretty quickly, actually. But then again, they've been talking about this for about 3 years, so this shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody.
And they've been neglecting Skype for as long as
they have. There was a bit of bad timing when the pandemic happened. For all of us, but for Skype in particular, because Microsoft was all hot and heavy on Teams and it was exploding in usage. And Teams, of course, is part of Microsoft 365 commercial. It's a moneymaker. It's a big reason for customers either to stay with or adopt Microsoft 365. Classic Microsoft bundling strategy, et cetera. They only made a couple of passing moves with regards to free usage during the pandemic, and Zoom ran away with that, right? Obviously, Zoom, the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened to Zoom, if you think about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they ran out of ideas. Now they've made it horrible, tried to be a platform, but
because that's what we want. Yeah.
The pandemic was the height of Skype, truly.
Yep. But it was good for Teams.
This network wouldn't exist without Skype. Paul, you and I know. For years, that's what we used.
Yep. That's what we did on .NET Rocks, too.
There was a lot of back and forth with Skype over the years because, my little tie-in with it is the original version of this app was written in Delphi, right?
Was it really?
The client
the front end?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And, it used a kind of a peer-to-peer network.
Yeah, because Zenstrom and Frias, the guys who wrote it, had written, was it Kazaa? They wrote a peer-to-peer
I don't know if they wrote it
system.
or if they were inspired by it or, but
no, I think that was their first product. Okay. Yeah. And so they use the same peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's what Microsoft killed when they bought it. And that was when Skype started to go downhill.
Yes. So Microsoft, you probably heard the term client server. They're kind of big in this. I know.
Well, the other part of this was phones, right? You can't peer-to-peer to a phone. Not when people are paying
so you lost
data.
You lost that, and that was one of the greatest things about Skype. I remember my daughter did her junior year of high school in France for a whole year. I got for $90, I got her a Skype phone number, and we could Skype together for free.
You can't peer-to-peer to phone. So I mean, first they did the Kazaa supernodes. They put those everywhere.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I when Skype, you have to remember Skype is 25 years old or whatever it's 20 something years old, and the world of 20 whatever years ago is quite different from today, right? We didn't have pervasive broadband internet. We didn't have mobile phones, or smartphones like we know them today, I should say. And the feature you just mentioned, the ability to buy credits and then call landlines or cellular phones or whatever we would have called them back in the day, was very useful.
Skype out, which they did right away.
Yeah, especially for international or long distance calls that were still very expensive in that time frame. Today everyone has a smartphone, so there's much less of a need for that type of feature. If someone were inventing Skype today, that wouldn't even come up.
Well, and the pressure on them on the entire telco industry to go VoIP anyway. That's right. Skype was part of that. They weren't the only ones. There was a bunch of services out there that did.
Yeah. So I've been around long enough. I've been writing about Skype since the beginning, and I kind of went back and kind of reacquainted myself with the history there and wrote up a very long thing about that if you want to read it. But to me, the interesting bit is that, well, there's a couple of things. So when Microsoft acquired Skype for, I think it was $8.5 billion in cash, by the way, it was by far their biggest acquisition at that time, super controversial. An argument that would repeat itself later with Teams when Microsoft.
I think they way overpaid for it.
Okay, they were trying to buy
Yahoo,
Slack 20 years later, and Bill Gates.
But I'm thinking in context of the reason that Ballmer paid $8.5 billion for Skype when it wasn't worth that is he just failed at the Yahoo acquisition.
Yeah, and that's right, and that was
kind of wanted a mark to show he could buy something.
Yep. But it was okay, right? So, it was horribly overvalued, et cetera. And was their biggest acquisition. But if you look at it, the thing that's kind of curious about that to me today is it's still their fourth biggest acquisition of all time, even today. Yes. More than they spent on GitHub, more than they spent on Nokia, which is the one I think a lot of us would kind of remember as kind of a big deal, right? That was a huge deal, and that was many years later. No, it wasn't. It was several years later. But
this was what, $8 billion they spent. What it was?
8.5. Yeah. LinkedIn though, $26.2 billion.
That's the thing. The numbers have really
they're hard. So like Nuance, 19.7. That's crazy money. So LinkedIn, Nuance, Skype, then smaller things that don't make the big list like Yammer, et cetera, are things that have been integrated into the kind of Microsoft stack. Right. That was the first thing that they did. After they acquired Skype, Skype started appearing all over Microsoft's product. But the controversy to me at the time was more just the same controversy that Bill Gates brought up about buying Slack, which is we already have this stuff. I don't understand like what, we had whatever MSN Messenger by that time was Windows Live Messenger, whatever. They had Lync by that point, which used to be Office Communications. In the commercial space, there was, I don't know if they called it Federation, but there was the ability to communicate back and forth across that divide. What are we getting here? And yeah, I don't know. They got a really good brand. Like you discussed earlier, had to change the infrastructure, which I think they did twice actually.
Well, the immediate fix, which is we can't be caught using other people's machines, was to build out the super nodes and just direct. You continue to use a variation on the Kazaa protocol to direct through the super nodes.
Well, Teams but then is still using this, right? I mean,
Azure.
That's the thing.
The back end is still Teams.
I think that to messaging at Microsoft or communications, whatever you want to call this, Skype is essentially what NT is to Windows, right? When Windows 2000 came out, remember the horrible tagline built on NT technology. I think I made this crack when Teams came out. I'm like, is there going to be a little thing in the dialogue that says built on Skype technology? Because,
no.
No. The answer is no.
Guarantee not.
No.
Well, the codec that Skype built is the one that Teams uses.
Like, and it's by the way, why we use Skype. It was the best codec. It was
fantastic. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And even today, we were talking about this yesterday with Alex Lindsay. He says, because that codec would use as much bandwidth as you had, unlike Zoom, which tops out at a few megabits a second, It would use 20 megabits if it could. And so you could get really amazing quality.
Yes, that's right. And they offer that professional version, remember, for broadcasters.
Yeah, Skype TX, or VX.
Yep. Yeah, we tried. I think we tried very briefly.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. But
remember, Colin, you have, by the way, kudos, a great history of Skype as part of your premium.
Yeah, you wrote a great piece there, Paul.
I just loved it.
I didn't even, you can't really hit on everything. It would be a book,
it's huge.
But it was, yeah.
Well, you left us out, but that's okay.
Okay.
Look at you, young Paulie. Oh, was that your first Skype? My first Skype call?
Well, that was at the
Messenger.
time probably Windows Live Messenger or whatever.
Yeah. We remember, I don't know if you remember, but in order to have multiple people on our shows, Colleen built what she called Skypeosaurus. This is back when we were in the cottage, which was a bunch of Mac Minis. Each caller had one Mac Mini, and there were a bunch of Skype calls then conferenced together.
Yeah, I did it with old laptops. I literally just had a laptop sitting
these
on
were
a
old
stand
Mac
side
Minis,
by side,
exactly. Yeah,
separate Skype accounts for each one, and
exactly.
You just hook up each person,
and you'd call into that one, and then we'd put them all together in a mixer, and we did that for a long time. And then we tried the Skype TX
when it came along.
BizRT offered that, and we tried it, and we weren't crazy. Thank goodness Zoom came along, because we actually get great results doing it. So
yeah.
We're not on Zoom now, by the way. We're on Restream.
Yeah, we went over to Riverside. We tried Zencaster for a while.
Those are WebRTC. This is a WebRTC solution. So is Riverside.
It's all basically the same thing.
And Alex said you're going to regret it. He does not like WebRTC. That's what
it's got its problems. There's no two ways about it.
Zoom is the best, and so we do still use Zoom with Ecamm on some of our shows like Twit, but I like to switch the shows, so we use Restream for the shows that I'm sitting here switching.
But Skype comes from desktop land. It never really was meant for mobile.
That's probably the problem.
This was, remember that we had those USB mics on a stick, that would sit on a stand. We would, it's a different era. This is the, and this, like Windows Phone, you can't point at a thing and say that's why that's
no. But I would say WhatsApp.
Yes,
came first,
okay, that's definitely,
and it was phone centric.
Actually, before that, even there were things like Apple did like iChat first on the Mac, right? Google did whatever. Google, it wasn't Meet at the Google Chat, whatever, G Chat, back in the day. And they were very much desktop based in the beginning because it was that era. But also, these were companies that got into mobile and thus had to make that work. Yeah. So they just did I think they just did a better job of
where WhatsApp was mobile first, and it just had the biggest thing that WhatsApp did right that everybody else struggled with was because they made it phone number centric. Then your phone book was immediately available, and anybody who had a phone number, boom, like your graph built itself. Yeah.
So you can, if you look at the timeline for this stuff, so iChat is early days of Mac OS 10, right? Yeah. So it's 2001, 2002. Yeah. Microsoft had MSN Messenger in the beginning that actually dates back to the 90s, and it evolved through the whole Windows Live phase, et cetera. Macs or iChat comes to iPhones, as does FaceTime eventually, right in 2010. Skype comes up in whatever that time frame was.
2005.
So, but mobile messaging to me was like the divide, right? So it's like BlackBerry obviously was huge, not phone centric, phone only, but BlackBerry only, right? But then iPhone happens, Android happens a year later. But that's when we start getting, like you said, WhatsApp is 2009, WeChat 2011. Like you start seeing these WhatsApp to this day calling it mobile focused or phone focused is a gross understatement. Yeah. If you ever try to use WhatsApp on your PC,
which I do
on your Mac, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a nightmare.
It's terrible. It's totally mobile centric.
It's phone link for one app.
And to be clear, even today, its audio and video stuff is not great. It's a group chat tool.
Yep. Yeah. But I think the final, I don't think, it's pretty obvious. The final nail in the coffin is Slack. And Slack has its own kind of funny history because that company they were trying to make a game and failed. And he was like, maybe I'll do this completely different thing. And they came up with what was eventually called Slack, and they changed the name of the company to Slack. And, this notion of like a chat-based interface for real-time collaboration, right? And this is probably, I'm trying to think, I guess 2013. So same year Microsoft bought Nokia, if I'm not mistaken, or right within a year of that. Slack occurs and is popular with the same kind of companies that would do Google Docs, like, or today Notion, or, smaller companies like startups and all this kind of stuff. And I, having used Slack, like to reuse your joke from before, Richard, I can assure you it's freaking terrible and I hate it so much. But but the thing that Microsoft did that I thought was really innovative with Teams that I think was smart and is as much of a reason for its success as, say, bundling it with, Microsoft 365, also smart, by the way.
Yeah.
Unless you care about antitrust, is they understood, like Slack was, this is how we do it. Microsoft is like, hold on a second. We have this installed base, billion probably people using what are now, yes, old-fashioned tools like Office, like Outlook, where we're communicating and collaborating over email. Or, something heavy like SharePoint or whatever. So Microsoft reuses SharePoint right there. It's what's on the back end of Teams, but they put it next to Outlook and they allow these things to interoperate. So if you're one of the old school guys, graybeard, whatever, you're like, nope, I'm never chatting. I'm not a child. There's no emoticons happening here. You can do all your stuff through Outlook. The young guys, the forward-leaning people, whatever, adapt to this very quickly. You'll love it, whatever, they're familiar with it. And you're all communicating and collaborating together. SharePoint's on the back end, the great Satan. But you have these two different front ends, and that was smart. And that's what I think would allow this thing to kind of come forward. I had forgotten about this, by the way. The original name of Teams was Skype Teams.
Right.
Of course it was.
Well, because they literally were using the same codec. But they had to tie to SharePoint.
Yeah, Skype for Business took over for Link at some point. I don't remember the history there exactly, but
it started as Office or live communications server.
Yep.
Right, going back into the Vista era, and then that as it got to R2, they renamed it to Link. And then they renamed that to Skype for Business.
Yeah,
we could throw response point into the equation if you wanted, like the number of telefo efforts that Microsoft had that ran into each other.
Response points, it was interesting because that was a solution initially for small businesses. Yeah. I actually had three.
I had one in the house.
I had 3 sets at one point, different versions. It was a good idea for that era, right? It was a different time. But the other thing I think this is not in my article, but the other thing that Teams did over time. So the pandemic happened. That was the focus. They very rapidly upgraded it, but they turned it into a platform, which is always going to be controversial. But they made it extensible with you can call them apps, whatever, extensions, doesn't matter. But you can run apps inside of Teams, right? Which was is a common model. I mean, Slack does the same thing, but it's fascinating to me. I bet Teams as a platform. Is certainly more active than Windows as a platform as far as new app development goes, but it's got to be in the terms of just number of users and whatever as a platform is got to be in the top 5 of Microsoft, probably top 3, right? It's big, like it was smart, and plus you get all the stuff you get with Microsoft 365 commercial around compliance and policy and regulation, et cetera. So it's good, That's where the
other piece that they got by buying Microsoft, getting Skype out, those became endpoints that actually turned Microsoft into a telco, which they still are. Like you could buy phone numbers from Microsoft, and
which brings us
use Twilio like everybody else.
So the other day, when this was announced,
VoIP MS, but I do it through Teams.
We headed out to lunch, and I mentioned to my wife, I said, Microsoft just killed Skype. She's like, they still make Skype? Which honestly is kind of a very normal
Lisa
response.
Said the same thing, actually.
So we watched this terrible TV show that's on Netflix called Somebody Feed Phil. You might have seen this. It's like a food travel show.
I know Phil.
He's like goofy guy.
Phil Rosenthal,
Yeah, he's a goof. But
produced Everybody Loves Raymond.
That's right.
So, yeah.
And everyone would know that for some reason, I guess. I don't. So anyway, he's a whatever. He's a guy. He's whatever. But at the end of every show, he makes a Skype call with his parents for some reason. It's terrible. It's the worst part of the show. But the Skype logo is prominently displayed in the corner, and they're talking on Skype.
So it's an ad placement. Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do next time, right? But and so I mentioned that to her. I said, you watch a show that uses Skype, every episode. She's like, yeah, I don't see that stuff. And I'm like, okay, which is like kind of it's a Mary Jo thing to say, right? Like, I don't notice that. Like, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Why would they know that? Yeah.
But there's a whole episode now to be made about migrating to Teams.
Yeah, I hope they do that. Yeah, exactly. They'll do the Teams. They'll probably just move to FaceTime, frankly. But
do you think Microsoft paid for that placement? I
would assume so, of course. Yeah. But I mean, but it's the only example I can think of something like that beyond the. I think No, it wasn't Sherlock. There was some show that used like Windows phones like years after they'd stopped making them. Remember? And like, I'm sure when Windows Phone was a going concern, they were trying to get Windows Phones in movies and TV shows. And, every company that makes things like this has that effort. But you don't really see a lot of Microsoft product placement in the world. And that was a weird example of it to me. But the other extreme response to Skype being killed is like people have just woken up out of a funk or something. And they're like, wait, what's going on? I rely on this product. I use it to call phone numbers like landlines.
I need it.
And it's like, wait, dude, what? Where are you from? Are you from the Wild West? But I think I've heard from every single person that does this. They're freaking out.
2010 now.
We've been talking about this for years. Yes, it's happening suddenly all of a sudden. But 2 years ago, Jeff Teeper was saying, look, we're not going to do it suddenly, but we are transitioning to Teams. This is the time. You got to start thinking about this stuff. And of course, the problem in this particular use case is that there is no thing in
there's no replacement
for
Yeah.
So I'm struggling to come up with a solution for these people. The obvious one would be Google Voice, right? I spent 20 minutes the other day typing in area codes, and then names of cities in the United States to try to find a number. And there were no numbers. So I don't understand why they don't have a UI that's like, I'm feeling lucky and just give me a number in Des Moines or something. I don't know. But I tried every area code I could think of in Pennsylvania, in Boston area, a bunch of city names, and I never come up with a single number. But if you could get a number, if you already have a number, I assume that would be a solution that you could use Google Voice to call those phone numbers, right? Like, I don't know. But yeah, that's a tough one if you're still using that. Just like it's a tough one if you're still using like a chariot or a horse and buggy. I mean,
no, that's not fair. That's not fair.
It's not fair.
You can use Google Voice though, right? You could still.
If you could get a number.
Oh, you can't?
That's what I'm saying. You can't. I tried to.
It's always a question of, can you get a phone number?
Yeah, because Google's been kind of indicating that they didn't really want to do this anymore either. Yeah. Well, you got to
listen.
When we sold the place at Coquitlam, I took the phone numbers that were dedicated to landlines there, and I migrated them into Teams.
Yeah.
Just ported them into Teams, and now they go.
But you're talking about Teams commercial, so this is a slightly different.
But it goes through an automated attendant, so you actually have to,
that's good.
So that blocks a lot of the spammers, and then
it's up to Microsoft to convince people that this is a viable thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that it is. You try and set up a Teams account. There's no better example. Start from scratch on a bare machine that doesn't have any Microsoft accounts on it at all. Right. Set up a Teams account from scratch.
I will never do that. No. What you just described.
But it's such a bad. I mean, there's famous stories of guys like Scott Guthrie took the whole Azure leadership team, gave them each like a $100 credit card and said, "Go build a website on Azure." With none of your existing accounts, go from scratch. And in a weekend, none of them could do it.
Wow.
Because the barrier to setting up accounts and things is just so freaking high.
Yep.
They make it impossible to get started. If you're already in Teams, it's fine. If you're not, you ain't getting there. It's just too hard.
And if you're just an individual person, human being, whatever, listen, you signing up for Google Voice today will assure you that they will kill that service tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like Google, Google will kill that immediately.
But normal people are using now WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or
that's right.
Signal, or almost all of these will do phone
every
calls
person, every business, everything in this country that I'm in now is on WhatsApp. Everything. People,
Mexico's all WhatsApp.
They text their doctors in the middle of the night and get responses. Like, this is the way people communicate.
What is it in the U.S. though? We don't have any consensus on.
We have blue bubbles and we have green bubbles, Leo, and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody were on an iPhone, iPhone messages would be great.
Would be it.
No, and genuinely, I have friends who are so iPhone centric that the fact that I have an Android means I can't chat with them.
The stupid thing is you can, but they're just being dicks.
I don't disagree. But, but the bottom line is you have to go where people are. And I'm not buying an iPhone for that.
Well, Apple's support for RCS now at least gives it a decent connection to Android devices, but
this is the most artificial restriction in the history of artificial restrictions.
It's blatantly to preserve their
it's a beautiful example of how terrible that comment really is. But
but I do wish everybody would just give in, and start using iPhones.
Yeah, I do too.
Submit to Tim Cook once and for all.
Yeah. My daughter refuses. She's like you. She's like you, Rich. She says,
I'm not in the Apple ecosystem, and why would I go into it? Right?
But her birthday's coming up, and I don't tell her, but I bought her an iPad.
Oh, God, that's so
a little
funny.
wedge.
Yeah, that will do it.
A little wedge.
Yeah. If you were using the iPhone, you could text and call through that iPad. Just saying.
Yeah. She insists on doing meat or something.
Some people insist on carving things into their arm with a knife. I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm just, we all have our little ideas. I don't know.
Sigh.
I love Apple. Apple has an evil company from the Discord. Yeah.
But Google isn't
evil. But Google's great, right? Like Google's fine. Yeah, Google's good. Yeah. Google's better somehow.
There are no kinder, gentler tech
If
giants.
evil is the bar, we just move to a farm and use the little
Google and Apple both move to the same motivations. It's just that Google's so bad at it. It's like
right.
Go,
Microsoft is just as evil as Google or Apple. It was terrible at everything. They just it's a combination of evil and inept. I guess is that better or worse? I don't know.
At least if you're going to work with an evil company, work with an inept evil company because
unless you want stuff to work.
Oh, telling you the iPhone.
So do we have a consensus on our Skype replacement? Because we know it's not Teams.
No, we do not. No. I should say actually. So if you're an individual, right? So for a lot of people listening to the show, this advice is going to be complete nonsense. But if you're just a person, like a non-technical person who would not listen to the show, actually. The consumer version of Teams, as I'll call it, it's actually a consolidated client that comes in Windows 11. It's pretty damn good. Which I say, having hated
Skype out.
What does it do? What now?
Does it still have Skype out? Like I can still phone a landline?
No, it does not. It's a modern.
It doesn't cell number for that.
No, it doesn't do that. It does modern things, but it works well, and it does support. One of the things I've been using it for, just in passing, is with the switch to the consolidated client, I can use it for Skype. I'm sorry, for Teams calls that are work related. It will work for that too, right? So if I get a Teams link, that works fine. I can do Teams meetings. It's great. I don't use Teams at work anymore, but if I did, it would work for that too. They don't have it as of the last time I checked, but any day soon, they're going to have some import to get your Skype stuff into there, and it will be there. So your history, your chats, your whatever. But as far as like an app, it's actually pretty good. This is an interesting comparison, maybe, because I know this is controversial too. It's further along than the new Outlook. I mean, it's
nice.
It is. I think it's pretty good. So anyway, there we go. All right. Just one more quick thing. Speaking of incompetent in Outlook, Outlook Mobile, a week or two ago, we talked about a slew of updates. There's another one. They're getting support for delivery and read receipts, which somebody on social media told me that fax machines had back in whatever year. Fair enough. Okay. So there you go. Anyway, for some reason, there has been a lot of activity on Outlook Mobile this year, right? We're only 2.5, not
newer interns.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's happened. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So, this is one of them, I guess. I don't know. So.
There's many things going on, and this is one of them.
Is one of them. Yep.
We're going to get to AI, gaming, still lots to come. I just want to pause briefly to ask a favor. Could you leave us a review on, not you, Paul or Rich.
I already have.
Our dear listeners, could you leave us a review on, particularly on iTunes? Turns out, people have been review bombing us. I don't personally. I think you either listen to the show and like it or you don't. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But advertisers pay attention to the reviews weirdly. So if you could help us by leaving a good review for Windows Weekly or any of the shows you listen to and like, an honest review. You don't have to lie. I think this show is great. But don't lie. But if you feel like the show's a good show and you want to support it, it's just another way you can do it is leave us a nice review, particularly on iTunes. People pay attention to that. I'm just mentioning that. Whatever. Hey, thank you for doing that, though, if you do. Now,
dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. We do talk a lot about AI on the next show. Intelligent Machines is coming up. Gary Marcus, as I mentioned, our guest. He's a naysayer. He's a skeptic.
Yep.
He took Kevin Roose to task, who wrote in the New York Times about AI coding. Now, it's easy to take Kevin Roose to task.
I was going to say, that's a soft target. You got to go after someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. But let's talk about AI for a little bit.
Yeah. Some of this
you guys know what you're talking about now.
Well, actually, I'm not even sure I would say that. But
let's not get crazy now.
You can almost not say
Richard
enough.
knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Okay. How fast this stuff is evolving. Like
it is incredible.
This past week, I'm only going to hit on some of the things. I mean, there's been so many developments. There was just as we started the show, Google announced they're adding an AI mode in experiment at first to Google search, for example. So I have to go figure that out. Microsoft. Kev Brewer put this up in the Discord earlier, but I just my kids are here. I haven't had time today yet, but the UK CMA approved Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI. After investigating it, etc. There's a lot of stuff going on. Microsoft, Brad Smith put up a public letter aimed at the Trump administration, saying, "Look, we have these AI export rules. They're hurting U.S. companies. They're classifying a lot of our allies and partner countries as basically nemesis. What's the word? Nemesis is
Nemesi.
Nemesi. Yeah, I know it's a weird one, right? Like,
that's a good question. Nemesis.
Nemesis is probably by definition one entity, right? You have a nemesis. You don't have nemesi, but if we did,
it would be nemesis.
Nemesis. Okay, there you go. And so that one seems like a pretty straight up. That's pretty obvious. NVIDIA's making the same complaints. Like they're going to start hurting U.S. companies with these things. So they're asking for some changes.
Just get in line, buddy, because
I know
the car manufacturers are ahead of you.
Yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of there's going to be a lot of complaints. I guess just policy things. I don't know. It's politics. OpenAI announced their latest model, which is not ChatGPT 5, but rather 4.5, or I'm sorry, GPT 4.5, which they're describing as their last non-reasoning model. So suddenly we have traditional models like this type of AI is about 2 seconds old, and we're already moving on to the next gen. They will never make a model of this type ever again, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, I mean, feel free to use it. Sounds wonderful. One thing I have been wondering about a lot and playing with a little, and did so again this week, is local AI, right? This notion that you can download some of these distilled smaller models, as I think of them as small language models, SLMs. By the way, Microsoft refers to these things as different things, which I hate. LLMs is one. One of my favorite names they have is they call them local language models. Mm-hmm. LLMs,
right?
Like another LLM.
Yeah,
okay.
Because it's not large. It's local.
Could they be triple LMs?
Local large language.
It's LM squared. I don't know. So
squared M.
Look, I think the general term we're just going to use here is AI models. And
L cubed M.
Yeah. Anyway, DeepSeek, as we know, came out a month and a half ago, whatever that was, kind of exploded onto the world stage. It was a big deal. Everyone's freaking out. Microsoft, to their credit, you could imagine they would see this as a problem, and they embraced it immediately. They put DeepSeek up in Azure. They made it available.
Studio. Yeah.
AI Studio. It's, it's there, right? And so this past week, they expanded on the single distilled model they had previously offered on Copilot plus PCs by adding 2 more that have more parameters, right? So the first one was 1.5 billion parameters. Now they have 7 and 14 billion parameter versions of this model. For the time being, they're Snapdragon only, but they will be going to, obviously, to any Copilot plus PC, so the x86 stuff as well. And all right, like I do, I'm like, I have to try this out. And so you can use something called the AI Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, which is an extension. And then from there, you can browse their little marketplace of all the available models. You can filter that list by, I only want models that are local and only or specifically work on the MPU, which nicely filters the list down. And these new models are there. And so I was like, well, what does this look like? And what it looks like is using a chatbot, except it's in slow motion, right? So a reasoning model like this will spit out, okay, so you're asking me this. And like, the way I would think about this is this and this. And so the way I think I would solve this problem, it kind of talks through it. But when you do that on an LLM in the cloud, this happens very quickly, right? Right. In fact, you have to kind of scroll back to kind of catch up with it. It's a little hard to stay up with it. When you do it locally against the MPU, at least the things I've done, which were all programming related, it happens slowly. Like I used this comparison earlier today, but the first time I ran Windows was on a 286 black and white, grayscale, with 2 megabytes of RAM, maybe one. I don't remember. It was a stupid low end system, and you could watch it draw the menu, draw the lines between the menu items, draw the menu items, and then it would do something, and it would slowly go do that thing. That's the effect. I think it's kind of that effect. But for the stuff that I need, it's actually pretty damn good. Like it's interesting. So if you want to, so if you want to experiment with LLMs that could be in the cloud or SLMs, as I would call them, but local models, it's not a horrible way to do it. Visual Studio Code is obviously a developer environment, but we're talking about something kind of technical here, I think. And once you get that thing in, you can run it in this little, they call it a playground because it's fun. And you could just interact with this thing. There's a switch. You can use web results as well if you want. I've left that off. I'm trying to see what this looks like locally, but it's kind of interesting. So that to me is interesting. And it's something I want to keep going with. It's similar to the work I did with the what's it called? The Windows Copilot runtime, where you can do the local AI stuff in an app, like a Windows app SDK app, is another one of those areas where I'm just trying to figure this out. Like, right now, I would say a lot of the advantages of a Copilot plus PC aren't necessarily AI related. It's more about the battery life, efficiency, reliability, et cetera. But this was the promise. And so I'm kind of curious to see. And then, builds coming and maybe right now you could, Richard, one of the complaints that he raises all the time, which is very real, is you have this really powerful system with a GPU. Yeah. 470 tops or whatever it is.
1,000 tops, 1,500 tops. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So one of the things you could do with this tool is look for those models that work off the GPU, right? Mm-hmm. And I suspect you will see considerably better performance than what I'm seeing off the MPU with this one thing. So.
Well, and it would put some pressure on, if you want to make a serious MPU, go ahead, mm-hmm. but you've got to make it better than an RTX video card, for crying out loud.
Yep. Or make a system that intelligently will just flip between them and don't. Well,
NVIDIA had this PC-sized machine at CES this year. It was $3,000. Could run GPT-3.5, right? Mm-hmm. People already dropped $2,000 on a GPU. You can build a $2,000 NPU that'll fit into a PCIe, X16 slot for $2,000.
Yeah,
and it should run full bore.
This was a potential preview of an possibly NVIDIA/MediaTek coming line of processors and PCs for.
No, and NVIDIA should be making that card, right? Like it's a line of cards that would make a lot of sense.
I think it's going to happen. Yeah, I think that's going to be a thing.
It seems apparent, right?
Yep.
And then, but the same way you can get a video card running in a chassis that plugs in through a DPI port or any other particular interface. Same thing for that NPU in that same
right. So I didn't include this in the notes, but this week is Mobile World Congress, or whatever we're calling it now. Yeah. It's in Barcelona, like it is, and HP and Lenovo, at least PC makers are there as well. It's not just mobile companies, but two of the things that HP showed off were essentially external MPUs that run off of whatever USB-C connection you have. So Thunderbolt obviously is the best, but one of them is a monitor that has it built into the back of the monitor. So it goes through the USB-C plug. And the other one's just like a little, just a little doodad that sits between your PC and the monitor. Or actually, no, it just, the monitor doesn't have to be part of it at all. It just plugs in the side, sort of like an external GPU, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like an eNPU. This is not a product they're shipping this year necessarily. They haven't announced it as a thing. It's more of a prototype. Mm-hmm. You can tell it's kind of a prototype because the little standalone stick piece was a 30 or 33 tops MPU for some reason. So it's not a Copilot Plus PC. But until we've made this shift, to these PCs that have the stuff built in, this is an interesting way, potentially. I think they're trying to gauge interest to add MPU capabilities to an existing computer, right? It's not a bad idea.
And again, via PCIe slot would be a fine way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, one could argue, do you ever play with a Google Coral? They're a few years old now.
No.
But they were a USB-based neural net model that was something like 5 tops.
Right. It was, which at the time was probably
a few years ago. No, they were great. And they were, we were implementing them in video, in NVMs, the network video machines that were monitoring security cams so they could do person recognition and vehicle recognition. And these days, most of the cameras can do that. But back then, this was a solution, and it was a $100 solution. Like the bus speed on a USB 3.2 port is high enough that you could build the same way you can stick an NVMe in there, you could stick a neural processing unit that could be pretty darn quick. Like you should ought to be able to get 100 tops in a USB-C slot.
Yeah, there you go. And so this is probably a temporary solution. As MPUs become integrated with CPUs, it will become the way, right? But even then, you could make the argument, maybe your built-in CPU with integrated MPU is only 11 or 13, or whatever the number is tops, and then you could go to a 40, 50, 100, like you said, whatever. That's an upgrade, right? And so if you're a developer or whatever, you need this kind of thing without you don't want to buy a new computer. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah. We are in a weird interim phase right now.
Yes, and just, again, next week, it will all be completely different.
There'll be another one.
It's just crazy. Microsoft announced a new Copilot this week. If with luck, this will be the last time I ever mention it. It's called Dragon Copilot.
I don't know why.
I don't know why either. I like the logo though, by the way. It's kind of a fun take on the standard Copilot rainbow colored logo. It's for the healthcare market, right? And so Microsoft has something called Microsoft Cloud for healthcare. It's an AI assistant for that industry. So we're probably not going to talk about it again, but
no, I've done some work with some of the clinical businesses there, and I mean, there's a lot of transcription and such going on in healthcare across the board, and more detailed record keeping is better. Most modern trauma centers now have multiple cameras and instrumentation on all medical equipment, so that they have full telemetry of everything that happened during a trauma event.
This is a bad time to have a hallucination, but I mean, it's look, whatever. I mean, this is going to happen. It's
mostly transcription, right? Is what they want. Right now there are a lot of skilled people that spend a lot of time transcribing what doctors say, and how more of that being automated will help.
Interestingly, I don't remember how much detail I provided about this. I must have told the story about how my wife used AI recently for her writing, and she writes about health and wellness and all this stuff. And so it says, this new AI assistant will search for medical information from trusted sources, make the information easily digestible for clinicians, and automate certain tasks, such as conversational orders and clinical evidence summaries.
Right.
That's almost exactly how my wife
what we're
used.
talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really interesting, right? But grounded in trusted medical sources for that organization. It seems smart.
Yep.
Okay. Stability.
And I guess the dragon word comes from the fact that dragon naturally speak. Nuance was there first, and dragon naturally.
Oh, you think that's what it is? Oh, that's.
I think it's a partnership thing, with them.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Good. Look at them reusing this brand finally. Okay. I always imagined one day, this is how I would write articles. I would speak, and it would just do it for me, and it would be dragon naturally speaking or something. And
you can do it now. Do you think?
Yeah, you could, but I thought I'd have to because of like I'd have problems with my wrists and things.
Yeah,
It just never happened, thank God. But I was just always prepared for that. Like
I've known people who did that years ago.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who it was, had carpal tunnel. And David Pogue always used Dragon, actually, to do his indexes. He wouldn't do it to write the book. But he wanted an easy way to kind of scan through the book and say, okay, page 122.
Right.
And it apparently worked well. That's how he did his indexes for years. That was 20 years ago.
Right.
Back in the 80s, we combined a Dragon Naturally Speaking board, an X10 controller for light switches and drapes, and an African gray parrot named Timmy.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Timmy wants to open the curtains.
I'm sorry.
I did open the curtains.
I was paying attention, but slow down for a second.
Timmy, open the curtains. No, but would you give the commands to the parrot?
Now that we did the commands ourselves, within a day, the bird knew the commands.
That's hilarious. I love it.
And then you found out the bird liked to go to bed early, would turn off all the lights and close the drapes at like 6.
Turn off everything.
Yeah.
Good night.
Well, we gave him control over a radio.
Animals
so we left him by himself. He only listened to Rush Limbaugh. He was a right-wing parrot.
Yikes.
I think that's really interesting.
Actually,
not the Rush Limbaugh part.
Our dog was a racist, actually. I don't know. I can't explain the animal kingdom. I can just watch the videos. But
yeah. Timmy wants to go to bed.
I saw a video of a guy trying to train a dog, like a golden retriever, to be able to hit a thing and then the treat would jump through the air and he could catch it in his mouth. And the dog was oblivious to this. So,
all right, we got to remember we have a hard out.
But a cat walked over, moved the machine, hit the button, and it hit the dog who was asleep. The cat figured it out. Well, the cat was watching the whole time, and the cat figured it out. But the dog had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. Totally.
Anyhow, okay. I'm just saying, not AI. I guess is funny.
but
so quickly
to continue the gaming segment. Yes.
Just real quick. So Stability AI has partnered with Arm Holding to begin with on generative AI audio, but they're going to work on other things, 3D and other. So the Arm is finally getting into this. And I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but at Mobile World Congress this week, there's a ton of AI stuff being added across.
I bet
Android, Pixel. Well, I guess Android and Pixel because Apple's not there. One of the best reasons to own a Pixel phone is the scam detection stuff on the phone. They're adding it to messages. This is the greatest addition possibly to a mobile phone this year because of all the crap we all now get.
Yep.
This stuff's huge, and they're bringing it to Android proper as well. It's not just Pixel. So if you have Google Messages on whatever Android phone, like a Samsung, whatever, you're going to be able to get that. Ton of Gemini things, including Gemini live features. The kind of AR stuff where you point the camera at the world and it tells you stuff about everything. Incredible. So this is all happening. And then Apple, of course, continues to struggle. And the joke there is, if you don't believe it, just ask Siri. I'm just kidding. So now Mark Gurman is reporting that they might not have the stuff they promised at WWDC last June and for maybe 2 more years. This is going poorly.
Well, because they were afraid of missing a year. So they announced before they were the normal level of Apple ready. They're going to miss a year anyway.
I would just
look dumb doing it.
The other day on the horse thing, we were up in the middle of nowhere. We were like 10,000 feet up in the mountains, and no one had a signal. And I triggered Siri by mistake, which is the only way I trigger Siri. And if you thought Siri was useless when connected to the internet, I challenge you to try it offline. It is hilarious. If this phone could drool, it would be drooling. It's unbelievably stupid. Okay. Just a couple of things in the gaming space this week, which is good, bad, and different depending on your perspective, I guess. It is a new month, so we have some new Xbox Game Pass games. I'm not going to make the joke about Activision Blizzard because even I'm finding that to be tired. But
looks like it's done,
not much, nothing there. And I've never heard of any of these games, but
no,
why would I know any of these games? This is apparently a big deal. I don't quite understand why, but Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 are both coming to all platforms.
God,
whatever that means.
They were very popular games at the time.
They were way back in the day.
So if you have a Nintendo Switch, if you have an Xbox One, if you have a PlayStation 4,
I'll give you an idea. Tony Hawk is now hawking arthritis cures. So
Tony Hawk, who walks around with one of those walker things now. Right,
it's reverse mortgages next. We know that. Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. So if you're looking forward
to 900, man,
you'll be able to get it in Game Pass, whatever,
and a nice guy too.
And then the PlayStation VR2 headset, which launched a couple of years back. Remember, this thing used to be more expensive than the console itself, which was kind of crazy. Like they did a pretty good job with the first gen on PS4. This one hasn't gone very well. So there were rumors or news maybe of them pausing production for a while. They just dramatically lowered the cost. Still expensive, but in the US, it went from $550 to $400. Which, by the way, you could buy an Xbox Series S and maybe 2 or 3 games for that amount of money. It's crazy. It's still expensive, but you can play Steam VR games on a PC using this with an adapter, but the $60 for the adapter. So there you go.
All right.
But I have a few more animal videos I'd like to discuss. Just kidding.
The shortest being abused by a cat segment in history. I actually got up to take a walk.
It's been a lot of AI stuff. You should have taken a walk during the AI thing.
I made a mistake. Hey, we will take a quick break because the back of the book is just around the corner, and I always like to do a little harangue before that to get people to join Club Twit. If you like the programming here on our fine network, if you enjoy what you're hearing, I would like to invite you to support it. Now, you might say, well, Leo, you've got ads. Well, okay, so here's the deal. The ads do cover 90-95% of our costs, but that still leaves a gap, and the club covers the rest. Thanks to the club, we don't have to scale down anymore. We've done a little bit of that, but we don't have to do any more of it. In fact, more people join the club, there's more things we can do. The other thing, and I always hate this when you pay for something and then you still get ads. If you join the club, ad-free versions of all the shows available to you. So, yeah, although I have to say some club members actually listen to the ads still. In fact, there was a demand that we put the ads in the Club Twit Discord so that people could hear what we were talking about. But you don't have to, and that's a very nice part of this. So $7 a month. It's not expensive to get rid of all the ads. You get access to the Club Twit Discord, which is a really great hang for anybody who's into the kind of stuff we talk about on our shows. Smart people doing interesting things. Here's the club. And a picture of Tony Hawk. This is the live chat, but that's not all that goes on in the club. We have all sorts, you can software development. You can talk about any kind of geeky subject you want. It's all in here. The other thing I like that we do in the club is we do events. So Thursday, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Pacific, we'll be doing our photo time with Chris Marquardt. We do that every month. Club members pay for that. Stacy's book club, Micah's crafting corner, lots of stuff goes on in the Discord behind the scenes. So you're invited to join that as well. And you also get the satisfaction of knowing you're supporting a great podcast and the podcast community here. And maybe if you all join, I can get that jacket. Everything you always wanted in a podcast network and more. twit.tv/Club Twit. Thank you in advance for joining the club. We appreciate your support. And now, back
You're ready.
to the show. Yep.
There were a couple of idiots in the chat I just want to address real quick. I can't be ageist if I'm old. So
you're not old enough.
Is that true?
I'm sorry, but I'm not making fun of age. I'm making fun of a guy that was a skateboarder who was old when they started making these games. He's old.
He's still cool.
He's just old.
And it is an old game.
It's a joke. It's not. We're not doing the overly sensitive about nothing thing anymore.
He's 56. How old are you?
Yeah, 58.
Okay.
So, yeah, sorry. I get to make that joke.
And it's I'm like 10 years older than Paul. So
if you make jokes about like Polish people or Italian people or some religion, it's like if you're that thing, that's what makes it okay.
Is it okay, really though?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
it's okay. Yeah, let's not be so sensitive. Okay.
Xbox. No, we did that.
No, we did that.
Look, your tip of the week.
Yep. So Google this week added the ability to remove yourself from search results, which is one of those kind of fun things that they only got in the EU before. So to do this, you have to go to myactivity.google.com, and then you can point them to search results and say, look, this shouldn't be if it's personal information.
Oh, this
especially,
is great news.
Yeah. So I haven't tried it yet, but it just happened. And it's one of the only Google search related stories I've seen this year that's been like, oh, there we go. Good. This is overdue.
Yeah. Bravo, actually.
Yep. So that's cool. So you can do that.
Okay.
And then, so Leo really threw a wrench in my plans before the show started by telling me about a new web browser called Zen, which is basically Firefox based, but with the Arc browser UI. So
it's like the best of both worlds.
I'm going to add that to the top of my list of browser changes from this week, because that's actually super interesting to me. So I didn't know about that. You might want to check that one out. I think it's, I don't remember. Do you remember what just Google.
It's zen-browser.app.
Okay.
Zen-browser.
It does look very interesting.
I immediately, it was Andy Anako, by the way, who recommended it. And I immediately started using it. And it is, it's Firefox. So Arc is a Chromium version. Yep. So this is Arc, the Arc UI, including spaces and a lot of the things we really like about Arc, on a Firefox engine.
On Gecko.
And one of the reasons I think you might want to move from Chromium-based apps is that Google is now starting to push Manifest v3. So your browser, your ad blocker is not going to work anymore. So,
okay.
uBlock Origin,
especially the most popular one.
Not,
yes,
but right. They have a light version that supports Manifest v3. But I don't know. I feel like that's an anti-user move on Google's part, which they're blaming on security. Mm-hmm. And I want to support, more importantly, I want to support a browser ecosystem that is just not one company.
If you want to stick with Chromium, Brave solves this problem out of the box. You don't have to worry about Manifest anything.
And as people are pointing out, and they say when you install it, it doesn't support Widevine, so the DRM video will not play in it. But that's fine. Who cares? Let's not support that
for now, anyway.
Yeah, right. There'll be a plugin or something.
No, this definitely
Firefox plugins. So.
That is an immediately solvable problem. So the other two this week, Opera is previewing their AI agent, right, in the browser. So they were very early. I think they were the first or one of the first to have any kind of an AI capability like in the browser. And when you think about AI agents, the point of it is you give it a task or some number of tasks, and it goes off and performs that on your behalf. And then it will come back and prompt you if it needs you to do something or it needs help with something. So what would be the point of an AI agent built into the browser? It would be to control the browser, right? And they interestingly differentiate this from things that take screenshots, like Recall or like I don't remember the name of the feature, but Gemini has a feature like that as well, right? That it's based on screenshots. Because it doesn't have to see the browser. It is the browser. It knows how the browser works. It knows how the DOM works in a website, et cetera, right? So you can say something like, I want to buy a pair of socks, 10 pairs of socks or whatever it is. Like they need to be whatever color, they need to be whatever size. I want the best price, et cetera, et cetera. We'll go search for that stuff. And it will come back and prompt you when it needs you to do something like approve a purchase, perhaps fill out a form, whatever it might be, something sensitive, perhaps, right? And so this thing is still not broadly available. I don't think it's even in their developer channel or their, what do they have? They have like an AI, they have some kind of an AI program for adding AI features to their browser that you can preview that stuff early. So that will be coming soon. Kind of interesting. So that's kind of interesting. And then Firefox, they have a new version of that browser every 4 weeks on a really rapid schedule. Little wrench in the whole Firefox thing. I think, I don't know if this was before the show, but we were briefly, or someone was talking about the updated terms of use.
The privacy things.
They have a horrible way of just stepping on rakes all the time and hitting themselves in the face. And this is a good example of that. So they came up with the new terms of use. Also, I think an updated privacy policy where they removed some language which seemed to protect users against their data being used for whatever purposes. They tried to explain it poorly, I would say. And then they kind of went back and changed everything. I don't know if they changed it back, but they changed those documents again. And
Steve Gibson said he's fine, with what they've said, but this was another reason why I picked up.
It was bad communication. Like I feel like if you read their explanation, okay, It's like maybe, but I don't know. Come on, guys. Anyway, Firefox 136, I think is the latest version, is actually a major update. It's the biggest update to the browser in a long time. So they've been working on an updated version of the sidebar for a while. That's available now in preview. And this is, in stable. And this is the one that has that AI chatbot, which can be any AI model you want, et cetera. And then all the normal stuff you get in a sidebar, including vertical tabs, right? So not the first time, I don't think Firefox has had vertical tabs, but I don't know the full story there. But now vertical tabs are officially informally back in the browser, part of the sidebar. There's a control now where you can clear your browsing data and cookies independently of each other. Previously, that was one thing. HTTPS first, which is a fairly obvious browser feature, but if the site you're loading supports HTTPS, you'll get that automatically. And if it doesn't, it will fall back. And just a bunch of other stuff related to whatever platform you might be on or whatever region you might be in, including support for Linux on ARM64 based systems, right? So if you're running Linux on I don't know what system that would be, but it's like, I guess, if you have an ARM based PC and you put Linux on it somehow, good luck with that. But if you did it, congratulations, you can now run Linux on there natively. So
nice.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I guess this means, like it or not, we've got to go to Richard Campbell now. And
Oh, no.
find out what's coming up on RunAs Radio.
Published today, my conversation with Karim Bissett about Secure by Design. So this was a reference to the U.S. government's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, which I believe is still in operation.
Yeah, but much restricted.
Just as far as the Russians are concerned, apparently.
Yeah, well,
but they've got a big focus on making
they're
more
harmless
security products.
Yeah.
Oh, everything will be fine, I'm sure.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. So this is as much a conversation about sysadmins, folks wearing tinfoil hats, talking to developers, and trying to get into more of helping developers to not use super user privileges, which is hard because often the products they depend on don't have good security features, security configuration anyway, and they can't make their tools even run without super user privileges. And it just sort of leads to this cascade where it's very hard to retrofit restricted security into place after the fact. So how do you get to it sooner and build them environments where they're working in normal security constraints? It was a fun conversation, but it's never easy to sort of set limits on folks. But the consequences of not having them are significant. So there's plenty of stories of the various exploits and problems. I'm pretty sure we said CrowdStrike at some point in this conversation.
Yeah. Is that secure by design or insecure by design? That's the question.
Writing code into ring 0 is not
idea.
Exactly secure by design. Nobody seems to want to do anything about it.
You brought along. Now I'm confused because it looks like. Well, what is that?
It's a container for a bottle of whiskey called Napo Castle.
Is there any whiskey left?
Well, yeah, there's a whole bottle of it. Right
okay, good. Okay.
I just took the cork out of that. I just wanted to handle it carefully because it's full. But,
this looks like it comes from Middleton. Is it an Irish whiskey?
It is an Irish whiskey. Okay. Napo Castle is actually a castle, an old castle too. It's in Clare County, which is the southwestern part of Scotland. It's about 50 kilometers north of the Shannon Airport. That's 10 miles in the measures of the oppressors. The castle first built in 1467 by Sean McConamara, which is now we would shorten to McNamara. The name means the castle in the place abounding with little hills.
Aww.
And stays in the McNamara family right through until Oliver Cromwell invades Ireland, and it's confiscated and given to a Roundhead named Arthur Smith. But a few years later, when the monarchy is reestablished in Ireland, McNamara gets their castle back. They basically have it for 300 or so years. In the 1700s, they sell it to the Scott family, who then operate and maintain it as well. And in 1855, it goes to the Baron Dunboyne. Was actually one of the leadership sites where there were meetings for the War of Independence in the early 1900s. And finally, in 1927, it ends up in the Quinn family and becomes unoccupied for many years and in disrepair. And then it's bought by an American in 1966, a guy named Mark Edwin Andrews, who was the Assistant Secretary to the U.S. Navy. He's originally from Houston, but was doing some work, apparently fell in love with Ireland and been working with what was then the brand new airport in Shannon. They call this the Shannon Free Airport Development Company. And ultimately, they do a restoration on the castle. The family lives in it. And you got to think in the late 1960s, the Irish whiskey industry was in a terrible state. Like literally in 1966, there were only 2 distilleries still operating in Ireland. There was the Bushmills distillery up in Northern Ireland, and there was Jameson, Cork Distillers, and that was about it. And that is when they sort of conglomerated, worked together to build the New Middleton distillery in the 70s, and bought up a lot of the brands that were bankrupt, the Redbreast and the like. So in that time, Mark Edwin Andrews was buying barrels of whiskey from effectively broke distilleries. And very famously, he bought a few good barrels from the old Tullamore distillery barrels that had been laid up in 1951 and were just sitting there. And he bottled it in 87. So it had been in sherry casks for 36 years. And it's called Napa Castle 1951. You can still find one of these bottles once in a while in auction. The last one sold for $2,500 US. And apparently there is a 1949 edition, also Tullamore Dew, 33 years in sherry. That's even rarer to find. And I couldn't find any pricing on that whatsoever. So that entity, the Shannon Free Airport Development Company, becomes just Shannon Development, and they have this group they call the Shannon Heritage Group, and they've restored the castle, and they operate it for medieval banquets and events and so forth. It becomes a famous place to stay. Charles de Gaulle stayed there. Richard Nixon stayed there. And ultimately in the 90s and 96, Shannon Development buys the castle outright from the family. But in the meantime, so that brings us to this edition of the whiskey, which is the son, Mark Edwin Andrews III, launches a company called Great Spirit, LLC. And he actually takes the remaining bottles of Napa Castle 1951 and makes it available to the public, and then starts to collaborating with the Middleton distilleries to make their own whiskeys. So these are still, again, Tullamore Dew, all these whiskeys come from the Middleton distillery. The Middleton distillery was built in the 70s specifically to have one set of stills and equipment that could make multiple kinds of whiskey. And so it's not hard to calibrate to make your own versions. And so the original Napa Castle from this new generation was a 12 that came out in 2010. And then they came out with this 16 as well. And I should wrap this up with in 2021, Irish Distillers acquires them. That's actually owned wholly by Pernod Ricard. So they're not part of the big conglomerates. So yeah, New Middleton, the Middleton distillery is Jameson, Redbreast, Red Spot, Green Spot, Blue Spot, Yellow Spot, Tullamore Dew. The whiskey itself is strictly malted barley. We know that's not a requirement for Irish whiskey. They do all kinds of crazy things with it. It does a triple distillation instead of a double. That's the way they like it. So they raise the alcohol level a bit higher, and then they age. And the 12-year-old is aged strictly in bourbon. The 14-year-old is bourbon and sherry. And this 16 is 14 years in used bourbon casks and then 21 months in Oloroso sherry. So my first taste. A big, strong alcohol note up front, which is always a surprise. Like, don't expect it to be, but not too sweet. Very gentle in the mouth, though. Boy, oh boy, that's too easy to drink. But for a 16-year-old, you would expect as much. This is a very drinkable first whiskey, sort of warms you up. You don't want to, it's $100 US if you can find it, about $43 ABV. So it goes down real nice. But yeah, that's a fruity, happy, this is Irish whiskey, and it's March, right? Like St. Patty's Day is upon us. So let's drink Irish for a while here. And this is a nice one to have around. I'd have a nice, 3 fingers of this off the bat, and then you can switch to Jameson and not feel bad about it.
So this is, if I'm understanding you, better than Jameson.
This is a first drink whiskey. This is a very nice, this is your $100 bottle of whiskey, pure, mostly, aged in bourbon and sherry. So you have this off the bat, have a nice toast, right? We, toast Skype. Thanks for all the calls. And then we switch to
pour one out for poor old Skype.
Then you drink the $20 bottle, not the $100 bottle.
Good. I need bottles to buy for my brother-in-law, who's an Irish whiskey fan.
Yeah, and Apple Castle, it's a great name. It's just that those guys, they don't own a distillery, right? They just make their stuff in New Middleton. But it's the same as Ryder's Tears and a whole lot of other whiskey makers, or whiskey brands. Just use the Middleton Distillery. It used to be called the New Middleton Distillery 60 or 50 years ago, but now it's just the Middleton Distillery.
It's not new anymore. It's been like Tony Hawk. It's
58.
No longer new.
How good can you be at 58? My goodness, right?
This sounds really good. I love Irish whiskey because it's not. It's never peaty or smoky. It's always a little sweet.
Yeah,
it's good.
But they can get too sweet. Like they can get a little weird, right? This is very much a classic barley whiskey.
Nice.
Made a classic way with a triple distillation, so it's a little smoother and a little less oily and stuff. It's light, and you can't go wrong. And so great to show up with as a gift. You like someone enough to spend $100 on them. Here's
exactly. That's why, and you can get it in the U.S. pretty easily.
You can. I found it at Total Wine.
Good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a wonderful show, Paul Thurrott. Thurrott.com, his books, leanpub.com. You can get the Windows Everywhere book and, of course, the Field Guide to Windows 11. Richard Campbell's at RunAs Radio. That's where he hosts RunAs Radio and .NET Rocks. Mm-hmm. And we always love getting together on Wednesday and talking about the latest news.
And cat videos.
And mostly cats tormenting dogs. But
cats
always fun.
And gray parrots who are out of control.
Timmy.
That was the showstopper for that sentence for me. I was like, wait, what?
Grays live a long time. Did you give him away or did he actually pass?
He was my roommate's parrot. But
so he left with the roommate.
He did pass. But,
he did? Oh.
But he lived a long life.
Yeah, they lived to like 100 or something.
They live long. Well, it's one of those things where they're one of the animals that lives longer in captivity than they do in the wild.
Because there's no threat. Except
a little less stress.
The home automation threat.
Well, no, he was very happy to be automated.
I think that's so cool.
The reality that we could give him control over his space so that we eventually set up curtains around his cage and definitely give him control of the radio. Do you think he knew
what he was doing? It wasn't.
I mean, to be clear, he was parroting, but there is straight. Sorry, did I say that?
Oh, you were serious.
Yeah, there. But was a stimulus response? Without a doubt, it was.
Sure, he knew something would happen when he went.
Yeah,
I know he doesn't understand the word. It's like AI. He doesn't understand what he's saying.
He would go to the microphone, right? Like he would go to the SM58 we had set up for him, and he would speak into the microphone.
He was trained. That's hysterical.
I'm not trained. He literally watched us do it, and then he
learned.
Yeah. And then we learned to turn stuff off that we didn't want him to control. Like he can't turn off the television because he didn't like the television. He'd always turn off the television. And
I'm glad cats don't know how to do that.
And he can't close the drapes anymore. Like we gave him control of his space, not our space.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is you could tell when he wanted to go to bed because he would still give the command to close the living room drapes, even though it didn't work anymore. It was just his way of saying, I want to go to bed. You people are annoying me.
Let's darken the room.
That sounds pretty smart to me.
I think it's really cool.
He had it going on.
It's good.
Thank you, Richard. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you,
We do Windows Weekly on a Wednesday morning, for me anyway, 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 2 p.m. Eastern time. And next week, we're going to go to summertime. Now, you aren't, Paul, right? Mexico no longer does
so it'll be
saving time.
Yeah, 1 hour off from the rest of the planet again. I don't know.
But Richard and I will be springing
we're doing
forward.
Our shift this weekend, and then for better or worse.
So that means it will be at 1800 UTC. Not because UTC changes, but we do. So I know it's very confusing.
It is incredibly confusing.
There's a law in the books in British Columbia that says the moment that all of the Pacific time zone
you have to follow
agree,
everybody.
Will stop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We voted
Washington
in California.
And Oregon signed on. It's just California.
In a referendum to not go to standard time.
Yeah, to stay on.
But you can't do that.
I was going to say, what?
You have to. You could say we don't want to do saving time, daylight saving anymore. Arizona.
So you want to only be on daylight savings?
That's what the Californians voted for, and of course, it takes federal approval because you're basically changing your time zone.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Well, nothing happened.
Yeah. Okay.
We voted for it, but I think it was a strong indicator that we would like to stop the madness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like both Washington and Oregon agree. Whatever, when California settles on something they can actually do, well, I'll do it.
We just got to be in the, GMT -8 and live with it. No more -7.
The sad part now is like mornings are great here because the sun's coming up reasonably early, and now it's about to get dark again.
And that's the argument, by the way, for this, because you in the Great White North have very long, dark mornings.
Well, and I realized deeply programmed into my brain is if it's dark and it's hot, it's very late at night, which became a problem when I started working in the tropics where the sun sets at 6 o'clock and it's always freaking hot. Like it's dinner time. I haven't eaten dinner yet and I can't keep my eyes open because programmed into my brain is it's dark and it's hot. It's late.
So when does the sun come up after this time change?
Oh, it'll be up around 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Oh, that's not bad.
Right now it's coming up at 6:30.
Oh, that's
very
not
nice.
Yeah. Well, frankly, if the sun wanted to stay in bed till 8, I'd be happy with that. They worry about kids going to school in the dark. Nobody wants that.
Yep. Except that's exactly what happens all winter long.
They do anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
you can't make the day longer.
The kids are more in danger because the bus driver's tired because you changed the time zone.
Right. There are more heart attacks
in the dark.
Next Monday there will be an uptick in heart attacks, auto accidents.
Yeah.
Because people have lost an hour of sleep. Well, we're going to do it anyway. So,
yep. Logic be damned.
The truth is, you don't have to watch live. Obviously, we're a podcast. You can watch it whenever you want. But that's only if you want to watch the live streams. There are live streams for our club in the Discord. There's YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Kick. So there are plenty of places you can watch live. Now, the real advantage of watching live, besides getting the freshest version of the show, is you can chat with us. And we watch the chat, as you probably figured out, for all of the different channels. So that's the advantage. If you really want to schedule it and ignore what time it is, just download a copy of the show at twit.tv/WW for Windows Weekly. There's a YouTube channel dedicated. You'll see a link at the Twit page. And that way, that's actually good to know because if you wanted to share like the whiskey segment or whatever with a friend, it's easy to clip it on YouTube. And then, of course, after the fact, you can get a podcast client and subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode, audio or video. No charge. Just download the show. We would love that. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Richard. Thanks to our club members. We'll see you next time, you winners and you dozers on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.